afternoon, everybody. We're going to call this meeting to order. Today we've got the State Study Commission on Low THC Medical Oil Access. And this came out of Bill HB 65, passed just this last year for the legislature. So we're going to begin with an opening prayer. And for those of you that have an agenda, it's actually a little bit off, so we'll just have to bear with us. So, but starting out with our opening prayer, Chairman Michael Gravel is going to lead us in prayer.
Y'all bow your heads. Father God, we thank you for this opportunity to gather together and discuss the issues facing our state. We thank you for the University of West Georgia and their hosting us today in the facilities that we've been able to enjoy and their hospitality. We pray, Lord, that you would give us wisdom and direction as we move forward to address the need on this particular issue and the need of patients in our state. Father God, give us wisdom, give us insight. We pray that you would lead, guide, and direct the conversations in this meeting, that you would allow everyone to be heard, that you would allow us to be civil in these meetings. We ask these things in the name of our Christ. Amen.
Amen. And Commission Member Dale Jackson is going to lead us in the pledge.
Let's stand.
Look at the sheriff.
Somebody's got an American flag. Lapel pin on. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now that we have that done, we're going to invite up President Kyle Marrera. He is the president here at the University of West Georgia, and he'd like to just come welcome everybody real quick. So, Kyle?
Thank you, Senator Brass. Thank you all for being here today, and welcome. Welcome to the University of West Georgia. I'm Kyle Marrero. I'm the 7th president of the University of West Georgia. I've been here now starting my 6th year. If you haven't been on our campus, it's about 645 acres, 2.2 million square feet of buildings, and record enrollment, 13,700 students. That's 18% growth just in the last 5 years. We also have record 4-year and 5-year graduation rates and record incoming freshman GPA in the history of our institution. So it's not only a place of growth, but a place where students are succeeding and obtaining their education. So I want to welcome you here. Enjoy the day. If you get a chance to visit the campus, walk around, and certainly if you have sons, daughters, granddaughters, grandsons, or anybody who wants to attend, come let us know, because we want to improve their lives through higher education, transform their lives, and we believe this is a place where that happens. So thank you for being here today, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, President Marrera. And real quick, let's just do an introduction to our commission members. We'll start down there on Shannon.
Shannon Cloud. I live in Smyrna, Georgia with my husband Blaine, and we have a daughter with seizures, and that's how we got involved in this effort.
My name's Dale Jackson. I live in LaGrange, Georgia. I have a 10-year-old autistic son and have been at the Capitol with Shannon for a while now.
My name's Alan Powell. I'm state representative from Hart. I represent Hart, Franklin, and Madison counties in northeast Georgia.
My name's Micah Gravely. I represent House District 67. That incorporates West Douglas County and South Paulding County from Douglasville.
Matt Brass, State Senator, District 28. I've got Coweta County, Heard County, part of Carroll, part of Truth, part of Fulton.
Hello, I'm Susan Driscoll. I'm from Osceola, Georgia. I am from an agriculture family. We're in our 6th generation of farming. And I have worked in this medicinal cannabis industry over the last 4 years in a number of states.
I'm James Woodruff, and I'm the sheriff of Troup County, Georgia.
All right, thank you, everybody. A couple of little quick house rules I want to go over, just as far as everybody's role here. Number 1 rule, and a lot of y'all were in our first meeting, but number 1 rule in this room is we're all going to treat everybody with respect. What you do outside of these doors is up to you, but I would hope that you would continue that. But in here, I'm actually going to demand it. And anyone gets out of line and does not treat each other with respect, then you're going to be asked to leave. So I think we can all do that. I know we live in a world or live in a nation where we don't always agree, but that's okay. We're all here to share our opinions. We're all here to share our knowledge, and we're going to respect each other's difference of those opinions. Number two, there's going to be no booing from the crowd. There's no questions from the crowd. This microphone here is for our speakers, and it is for our public comment section, which we will get to at the end. There is a public comment. If you wish to make public comment, there's a sign-up sheet for that, and when we get to that portion, you will be allowed to do such. We ran out of time last time on the public comments, so I have that list of those that were that we did not get to. So we'll go over that list first, and then we'll get to the other list. And, just so y'all know, we did run about an hour over, a little bit over an hour last time. So I'm hoping not to do that this time. So we're going to do a little bit quicker today. But with that, Chairman Grau is going to go over a quick history and purpose of this commission.
Thank you, Senator. Many of you know, many of you have been actively involved. 2013, 2014, Representative Alan Peake brought a House bill at that time, 885, which would allow for the possession of medical cannabis oil. That bill did not pass in that particular term. David, right here. And so House Bill 1 was submitted the following term. That allowed for a select group of diagnosis and then possession of the oil. There was a study committee that was conducted. The study committee, even at that time, looked into cultivation, but it was not pursued. So where we are today in the state, obviously due to the effect of House Bill 65, is we have patients in the state numbering around 5,000 who are legally allowed to possess a low THC CBD oil for medical purposes if they have obtained a card. The diagnosis range between 16 and 18 diagnosis. What we have though is a problem of where individuals who are legally allowed to possess the oil, where they are going to get the oil. It's illegal to manufacture it or dispense it here in the state. It's also illegal to transport it across state lines. Many of these families have had to find themselves breaking federal law in order to go and retrieve the oil for a child or a loved one, and many of those who have the card are found in the position of not knowing where to obtain the oil at all. So we are here today, let us remind everyone to talk specifically about low THC medical cannabis oil access. We cannot entertain any type of discussion or questions dealing with the recreational use of marijuana, nor would we entertain questions or discussion on the smoking leaf form of medicinal marijuana. We are following the protocol the legislature has allowed for the possession of low THC medical cannabis oil and how that will be accessed in our state for patients who are legally allowed to obtain it.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, with that, we're going to get into our presentations and into our agenda. So first on the agenda, I've got Terry Norris, but he had an emergency come up. He's not going to be able to make it, so we've had to shift the agenda around a little bit. But I do got Sheriff Gary Long out of Butts County. He'll be first up.
I'll be real brief.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you for what you're doing. Appreciate each and every one of you. Terry did say wish he could make it. Unfortunately, it was a chief in South Georgia that ran over, and he's down there, passed away. He's with the family. The Sheriff's Association, the stand is absolutely no cultivation in the state of Georgia. No recreational use, absolutely not. And we do, in fact, support low THC oil for only children with seizure disorders. We do support that, and that's the consensus that Terry wanted me to deliver to y'all on the where the sheriff stand. One thing that I'll say, I went, studied this, looked into this, and there's a lot of challenges, especially with the cultivation, and I'll talk real shortly on that, and then I'll be quiet. When you allow cultivation in the state, we're already the hub for the Hispanic cartels operating out of Mexico. Atlanta, Georgia is it. We know for a fact that 70% of all illegal narcotics crossing the border are destined for Atlanta, Georgia. No doubt about it. I think we set an environment where they're growing. The same thing they're seeing in other states is where they have allowed cultivation. You see all kind of cartel criminal organizations coming in and setting shop up in them states. I don't think by no means that's where we need to be headed at all on that. If you look at it, the one other issue that I want to bring to light, I know y'all said 5,000 recipients on that. Another state had 2,500 recipients. The first year they doubled that to 5,000 recipients. There are over 100,000 recipients today. So I think it's one that we really need to weigh it out. I'm not opposing, look, sheriffs aren't heartless, and if it was my child, I'm going to do what I have to do to help my child. I support that completely. I know there's a problem in the state because these children can't get this. I understand that too, but cultivation is not the answer to that at all. I think we're at a federal level issue on that, I understand, and we need to do something to bring relief to the children. I got it, but that's where we're standing as sheriffs.
Thank you, Sheriff. So let me ask you something real quick, Sheriff. If y'all are your four children being able to obtain the medicine, correct? You said that.
Right.
Okay. If federal law doesn't allow it to cross state lines, and it's not cultivated here, what is the Sheriff's Association's suggestion on how they obtain that medicine?
I can't give you that answer. I really can't. That's something I can give you this answer. I can give you this. I think that our legislators made a law that's no good. That's my stand. Is they've made a law that don't have an avenue. And the things that's going to come with it. And I know you hear this everywhere you go. And we're not talking legalization. I understand that completely. But if you go back to prohibition, alcohol. And today it's supposed to be regulated. You know, a friend of mine owns a big distillery up in the north part of the state. I've been up to that distillery, walked through the distillery, just toured the distillery, and his exact words were this. I said, they come by and check what you're putting out, what you're bottling and sticking in these stores. His exact word was this: Department of Revenue and ATF. He said, no. As long as they're getting $3.75 a bottle, it don't matter what I put in that bottle. They've never checked it. So there's a whole lot, and I'm glad you're on this committee to study that, because when we do get to there, there's going to have to be a whole lot of things put in place to ensure what we are giving these children is safe and it's done the right way. But I can't give you that other than legislators made bad law, and a law that has an island in the middle with no bridge to it. Y'all created the law. I think it's the people at the Capitol that need to figure out what they're going to do it, but cultivation's not the answer.
We've never heard that we've created a bad law before.
Maybe just this one, that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
I would like to ask a question, please. Have any of you guys had an opportunity to spend time with any of the law enforcement in Florida, where they have initiated, and I guess it's been in the law about 2 or 3 years now, with the medical cannabis?
No, ma'am, I have not personally. I have not. I don't know of any sheriffs that have. There might have been some down in South Georgia that has, but I haven't personally.
Okay. I would encourage your group to have some discussions with them. There's some, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but there are some really good protocols that have been put in place from a security and tracking standpoint. And to date, I haven't heard of any significant issues with diversion of product in Florida. So I just encourage you to study what they're doing, that we can learn from that as well.
Okay, thank
Mr. Chairman? Can I ask a question?
Yes. Dale.
I preface this comment by saying that my brother-in-law happens to be the head drug agent for my sheriff down there.
you. And then the table.
Yes. But as someone who has also attempted to go to other legal states, The worst thing for myself, a father, is that it is legal in those other states, but it is not legal for them to sell it to me. So the only thing stopping them and stopping me from getting medicine is the fact that it is legal. If it was all simply on the black market, I could go buy as much as I want, but people in Oregon and Washington have been given the ability to legally produce oil. They just cannot jeopardize that by selling it to me. So my answer to you for the drug cartels and so forth is to legalize it so that you give them something to punish them by taking away their license if they do sell it to someone that doesn't have a card. And secondly, I would also encourage you to look into the statistics that why would you sell something to the drug cartel for $50 that you can legally sell out the front door for $150? And that's the biggest thing that I feel like that we understand that you are compassionate, you're compassionate people, but I don't think you, because you haven't been put in our place as parents and caregivers, you don't understand maybe the economics of what good could come out of this to actually help you do your job better. And so I would encourage the Sheriff's Association to look into that a little bit more, and especially from the patient's point of view. And I think that you can see that this issue could actually help you.
Any other questions from the committee? Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for being here. Okay, next up, I've got Susan Driscoll, who actually is one of our commission members. Susan has worked in several other states, and she can tell you a little bit more about that.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be part of this study committee to help the state of Georgia properly research and make a recommendation to enable the state of Georgia to not only provide high-quality, consistent, and safe medical cannabis products to the patients of Georgia, but also to be a benchmark to other states as this industry continues to mature and grow. I think it's important that I give you a little bit about my background so you can understand where I'm coming from and what perspective I have. I worked for about 10 years for the Coca-Cola Company, which launched my global marketing business experience as a small business owner with my husband working in 100+ countries. But more importantly than that, we were able to establish our global headquarters in South Georgia and offer many young people from our area to begin and build careers on a global scale. Both prior to selling our business in 2012, but even more so after we sold our business, my husband and I have actively engaged with hundreds of Georgia college students in sharing our business experiences. In our pursuit to give back to South Georgia, so you can tell I have a little special place in my heart for South Georgia, my husband and I, after the sale of our company, committed full-time to be the co-deans of the Stafford School of Business at Abraham Baldwin Agriculture College. Several of the young people we have worked with over the years have pursued ambitious goals and disruptions in the marketplace. One of those students is the co-founder of a medical cannabis company. I never thought I would be involved in this industry, but through the persistence of this young man, my husband and I supported him and his partner to thoroughly investigate and explore this opportunity and to understand the potential medicinal benefits of cannabis. To date, I am probably one of the very few in this industry that has never utilized this product in any form. That is not to say that if for medical purposes I needed the product, that I would not use it. In fact, after what I have learned over the last few years, I would definitely use the product if I needed it for medical purposes or if anyone in my family needed to use the product. I have been mostly on the operator side of this business but through this have met numerous patients and families that medical cannabis has changed their lives. I was involved in building the infrastructure from the ground up in Florida for a medical cannabis company, which included building an indoor cultivation facility, extraction processing facility, and a retail delivery distribution facilities. I was also involved in establishing a similar but much smaller infrastructure in Texas. I have also been involved in the application process for a few companies in Florida, Texas, Pennsylvania, Arkansas, New Jersey, and Virginia, some of which we were successful and some that we were not. I have worked with regulators and have studied the various markets and approaches over the past few years. The good news is that Georgia is in the position that we can learn from the successes and mistakes of the 29-plus markets that have approved the cultivation and distribution of medical cannabis. There are key items that need to be considered through this process so that the patient access that we are seeking does not get further delayed nor create added costs to the patients. Unfortunately, there is a history of lawsuits during this process in most states, and we should do everything we can to build a process that will limit the liabilities to the state and create a platform and application process that will not slow down patient access or add incremental costs to these patients. Oops. As the study committee and the state work through the process providing safe, consistent, affordable, and reliable access to medical cannabis to patients in Georgia, there are several high-level areas to be considered. I will cover several of these as we proceed over the next several slides, sharing the learnings that I have from other states that may apply. These areas fit into two broad buckets: regulations and infrastructure. But the focus should always be on the patients: access, affordability, and quality. First, I'm going to start right away with a recommendation on how the state can consider providing safe, consistent, high quality, and an affordable product choice to patients. I will then walk through each area with why I'm recommending the actions. Now, I will preface this that I currently do not understand the current departments and regulatory agencies in Georgia well enough to specifically recommend who should exactly do what. This is part of what I hope this committee will be able to work through over the next few months. The regulatory structure is a key area for success. Different states have established different approaches to different levels of success. Almost all create a group within the regulatory agency to regulate, monitor, and communicate with the medical cannabis entities that provide cultivation, processing, manufacturing, and distributions. For example, in Florida, Arizona, Delaware, Minnesota, Montana, New Hampshire, New Mexico, New York, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and West Virginia, the regulator appears to be the Department of Health that hosts the cannabis regulating entity. In Texas, it is the Department of Public Safety, and in Connecticut, it is the Department of Consumer Protection. Some states have multiple departments to co-regulate, such as Louisiana, where it is the Board of Pharmacy and the Department of Agriculture. In Ohio, it is the Board of Pharmacy and Department of Commerce. In New Jersey, it is the Department of Health and the Department of Agriculture. Arkansas has a medical marijuana commission that oversees cultivators and dispensaries, the Alcoholic Beverage Control inspects facilities, and the Department of Health issues registry cards for patients. In Illinois, the Department of Ag oversees cultivation and testing, financial and professional regulations regulates the dispensaries, and the Department of Health manages the patient registry. So as you can see, there's a lot of different ways that other states have managed the regulations. I think over the next few months, our committee will be looking at some proper ways that we can do that in the state of Georgia. Looking at the key areas that are involved with providing access: cultivation, processing, manufacturing, testing, and distribution, I do recommend that we create a Department of Medical Cannabis program that is regulated potentially by the Department of Ag for cultivation and other appropriate regulatory authorities that oversee other relevant entities with inspections and oversight regulating processing, manufacturing, and distribution. As I said before, there could be some federal issues and other things that would change my recommendations, but I think we should put people that are familiar with these type of infrastructures to be regulating those parts of the industry. One that should be a very logical thing, it is critical that the department is staffed with qualified personnel with the appropriate relevant experience in similar fields. As I said, this should be logical, but unfortunately in some states, like the one south of us, this has not been the case and has hurt the patients through the process. Testing is another key area that is often overlooked. In fact, the state of Texas does not require third-party testing or verification, which I believe is a mistake. Now, the good news is, being the product is not smokable form in Georgia, for the entities to create the final products, they must do a lot of self-testing throughout the product formulation process. Through the proper tracking systems, the results of those tests should be transparent and visible to the public. Some entities are better than others at managing their tolerances of acceptance, but the equipment and tools are there for testing the products through the production cycle. I would recommend that with proper regulations in place and the state fulfilling its obligation to make sure that everything meets those regulations, including the products and inputs into those products, the current controlled substance labs authorized in the state, if there are any, should be authorized to audit and/or handle these internal testing processes by registering with the state for delivering these activities, whether at their current labs or at the licensee facilities. Next is the structure and infrastructure of the entities. My recommendation is to start with a limited number of vertically integrated entities. Vertical integration allows the entities to manage the introduction to market in a more efficient and controlled process. By using a staged approval process, such as executed in Florida, this allowed the state to partner with entities to track and manage the introduction to market process and learn and manage together any significant issues that could delay access or negatively impact patient costs, thus creating a soft form of a public-private partnership. We must always remember that the goal is patient access to quality, affordable product. The program should be always designed to meet those goals. Some states have tried quite complicated regulations and rules to try to overcome political hot buttons or perceived dangers of medical cannabis. My philosophy is always go small to be big and keep it simple. About 9 of the current states require vertical integration, with about 6 separating cultivation and manufacturing from dispensing. There are some outliers, such as Arkansas, where the state is allowing dispensaries to have up to 50 plants on site, which, by the way, I think is a security issue and a qualification issue. And then there is Louisiana, that has 2 universities to grow and process the product, which they have already outsourced to other private entities. I also don't think that Georgia should follow this path, since we know, unfortunately, academia can sometimes be slow with bureaucracy, not sure they have the right capabilities in-house. But the bigger question for our universities is the issue of federal funding, which I do not think we want to put at risk. I am not recommending a long-term vertically integrated market or a market cap on entities. I am recommending we build a program that begins with vertical integration with a limited number of licenses, with the ability to expand to multiple types of licenses and entities as the market matures and the demand can sustain the structure. New Jersey is an example of several elements that Georgia can learn from. Initially, New Jersey was open to nonprofits only, issuing 6 licenses. This past month, New Jersey opened their licensing process to for-profit entities by preparing to award 6 more licenses by November, and in first or second quarter of 2019, issuing 6 more as demand grows. New Mexico and Ohio have no cap on their number of licenses, but discretion to expand as needed. And other states have set minimums with no more than number for their set of entities. Again, I think it's too early to set a cap on the number of entities because it's too premature to understand the eventual market size. Some of the early states, such as California and New Jersey, began with nonprofit entities, but that is when the federal government was significantly riskier than it is today. These states are almost all now transitioning into public entity ownership. Georgia is a pro-business state, and I believe commercial entities are nimbler, faster, and better capitalized to allow the patients of Georgia to have access to quality products more quickly. With proper appropriations, these entities will provide revenue to the state and economic development to the communities in which they operate. The one area that I do not believe is discussed enough is the pattern of lawsuits by entities that do not receive a license during the application and selection process. I believe by having no cap on number of entities with the opportunity to expand over time as demand requires, the applicants that do not receive an initial license is not completely shut out of the market as the market grows. The last thing the state of Georgia wants is for the newly formed regulatory department to spend their time initially fighting lawsuits, when they should be working with the new licensees to build the infrastructure and systems quickly and properly to provide affordable access to patients. Lawsuits cost the state a tremendous amount of money to defend. Just look at Florida and Arkansas to name a two. All of these states appear to build an infrastructure for a small number of entities to monopolize the market, thus opening themselves up to significant lawsuits throughout the process. On the other hand, other markets that initially have no limits and early issue a tremendous number of licenses are at risk to creating a market too quickly that is not properly regulated and managed, which harms the patient from lower quality product without the proper quality controls. With a limited number of licenses initially, the state can fulfill its obligation to properly regulate and speed up access to patients. I believe strong regulation is required to protect the patients. For example, in Texas, the Department of Safety inspects each of the 3 licensees in that state once a week, every week. Now, I think that's a little bit of overkill, but it allows the regulators to work hand in hand with the initial companies to guarantee quality product in a timely fashion. My last statement on infrastructure is to limit 1 license per entity. In Virginia, it appears that as a region structure was established and entities could apply to more than 1 region, there's no restriction on ownership by an entity to have more than 1 license. Thus technically could create a monopoly. Most states have used a region basis for providing access to all people. However, to give consumer choice, the state needs to make all licensees' product available statewide regardless of where grown and manufactured. If the state uses the multiple region format, I would recommend that entities may apply in multiple regions, however can only receive 1 license in the state. The Florida regional infrastructure is a good example, even though the process was a little muddy, of spreading the economic impact throughout the state by requiring licensees to have its cultivation and processing in its regions of license award, but also available to distribute product statewide. Also, I recommend that the state does not require that all 3 activities must be in the same facility. For one thing, I believe having the dispensary and cultivation processing in the same location is a security risk, which is actually what Texas and Virginia is requiring. But it also raises zoning issues because all 3 activities are very different in nature and traditional zoning rules apply differently to each step in the process. Also, by allowing facilities to be separate and an individual, it expands economic development and job opportunities in more communities across the state. I know delivery of medical cannabis can be scary to some people. However, I encourage you to research states that currently have delivery. I am not aware of any significant security issues with delivery throughout the state of Florida, where the delivery vehicles are not required to have security personnel, but are required to be monitored through security technology on a real-time basis and provides an invaluable service to patients that are ill and cannot travel even a few miles from their homes. In fact, the state of New York just started allowing delivery in the state with the primary purpose to give the patients better access through that state. I believe it is important that residents of Georgia are not left out of this new industry. However, it is also important to utilize the skills that exist outside of the state as well. Georgia is fortunate in that currently there are several Georgia entities that are already involved in this industry in other states and can bring that knowledge and expertise to their home state. There is no need to start with inexperienced personnel and knowledge base when so many states have set the precedents and allowed individuals to translate their relevant traditional skills into this industry. I recommend that the state does not make Georgia residency a requirement. However, weigh heavily in the application process the involvement of citizens of Georgia and make sure to regulate that licensees adhere to what they said they would do in this area after their license is awarded. A final area that I do not have concrete recommendation currently is local regulation pertaining primarily to dispensaries. There are two main approaches that have been tried: 100% local determination by the local community and state preemptive resolutions. A key challenge in Florida is working with local communities to obtain approval for dispensaries. Now, this is a state where the citizens have voted for the constitutional amendment in the state of Florida to approve medical marijuana, as well as several revisions of legislation over the last few years in strong favor of the product. However, there are a significant number of communities that have not allowed or make it almost impossible for entities to open dispensaries in their communities, even in Miami. To obtain patient access, this area needs to be studied over the next few months in more depth and for a proper recommendation and approach. The one way to overcome this is through delivery. Which brings us up to the next point: level of regulations versus application. This is an area that I've not seen a state perfect yet. Applicants can pay entities $100,000 to write their applications for them and make great promises to the state on hiring local, developing diversity programs, contributing to research, contributing to local charities, meeting timelines, to name a few of the softer application items. However, I have not observed a state to properly regulate against those promises. The states today, some better than others, are very good at regulating use of pesticides or the non-use of pesticides, tracking cannabis, testing the final product, security protocols, registering patients. However, I have not seen a state properly measure these softer commitments I mentioned earlier. I'm going to quickly highlight other areas I recommend our committee continue to study and review over the next several weeks. Financial stability and good standing of owners, investors, and managers. To properly operate a medical cannabis entity that is vertically integrated, an entity needs significant funds, probably a minimum of $5 to $7 million. The state should make sure those that are given licenses have the proper financial backing and sustainability. In Florida, several of the initial licensees knew that they could sell the license once they got the license, so they were not focused on quickly building any infrastructure for patients. So questions of transferability should be addressed. Security is definitely one of those. There is a proper balance for security. Armed guards are appropriate in some locations and may not be necessary in others. For example, in Florida, if an entity wanted armed guards in delivery vehicles, that entity could not get proper auto insurance because of the industry and the presence of the armed guard. There are good standards of security being established in many states that do not require an undue burden on entities that increase the cost to the patients. From an entity operations perspective, there are many key areas to be addressed via regulation in the application process. Some are pretty straightforward, such as personnel. Personnel should not have drug or theft-related crimes, no felonies or greater. They should be 21 years or older, and the entity should require background checks. Inventory tracking. The states are very good at tracking for diversion, but sometimes not so good at tracking for product recalls in the systems that they require. Then others get a little more complicated, such as pricing, which I believe can be managed in an open market, which allows or requires compassionate pricing programs by the entities for those that cannot afford the product. Access to dispensaries. The tendency is to follow the Colorado model, which quite frankly makes you feel like you're doing something illicit. Again, Florida as an example. The dispensaries are more open access, which gives a more comfortable feel where a patient can learn in a comfortable, non-intimidating environment about the product. With the proper security protocols and limited access throughout a facility, an entity can take away the mystique and make patients comfortable. And finally, at our last hearing, I heard concerns about abuse. I would recommend the state use some of the appropriations revenues from the industry and require entities to put funds toward abuse prevention education and the proper use of medical cannabis programs. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to continuing through this process so the state of Georgia can become the model for producing and distributing the highest quality medical cannabis products to its patients. Thank you.
Any questions for the committee?
conversation, of the states that you listed, do you have a number of those that are doing, that are cultivating, that are doing outdoor grows as opposed to indoor grows? And do you find one over the other to be more secure in keeping the product and making sure that the product is in the facility, out of the field, or how it's being transported?
All of these states require indoor facilities. The indoor may be a warehouse type facility or even greenhouses, but they also all require pretty tight security. Most of them have 8-foot fences. Every inch of the property is under video surveillance 24 hours a day. Some of them require 24-hour security on site, alarms that go directly to the law enforcement. So they're all indoor and they're all very, very secure.
Follow-up, if you will. Is there a, depending and varying on state, are they contracting with local law enforcement, or are they calling in third-party security agencies or companies?
Most of them hire the security personnel internally. They're staff of the entities. There are some that outsource to security agencies. Local law enforcement are just made really aware of what's in their communities and are building partnerships for if there are issues.
Thank you.
No further questions. Thank you, Ms. Driscoll. And before we go to the next speaker, late to the party, we've got Representative David Clark. Dave, can you quickly introduce yourself?
I'm State Representative David Clark, and I represent District 98 of Gwinnett County, Beaufort, Sugar Hill, Suwanee are my 3 cities, and glad to be here.
Thank you. And also walking in late, joining us is Representative Park Cannon. Thank you, Park. Thought I saw her earlier, but she's, oh, there she is.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here. You were at our last meeting as well, so I know this is an important issue for you. So thank you for being here. Okay, next up, we're supposed to be a little earlier in the presentation, but Pete Scandalakis. Pete is the Executive Director of our Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia. Pete, are you ready to go? Pete is a former DA. In fact, he was my former DA, so he never locked me up, so I appreciate that.
No problem. I like to keep people out of jail instead of sending them to jail.
Well, thank you for being here. The floor is yours when you're ready.
Thank you for inviting me. I've made some notes and just let me find them real quick here. First of all, thank you. I appreciate being here. I see a lot of people on this panel that I know. I see my sheriff up there from Trick County. I still live in Trick County. I see people I work with every day. I see Dale Jackson up there. Dale and I have had many conversations. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to address this panel. There's not really a lot I can add to what Ms. Driscoll said. I thought she was quite thorough, and I really enjoyed her presentation. I'm sorry I missed the whole thing. I was a little bit late getting here, but I have to echo one thing she said is go small, and I think she said think big and keep it simple, and I think that's probably the best way to go about this process. Let me say this. I'm here on behalf of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council. Prosecuting Attorneys Council represents 49 different district attorneys. There is no consensus on this matter, so we're neither here for or against what this committee is trying to establish. We understand that this is a legislative policy, it's a legislative issue, and therefore we're here to support what you're trying to accomplish by way of policy. And so that I wanted to be clear on that because we have surveyed our people, and quite frankly, just like the public in the nation, we're divided, and so this is a legislative matter. I do not envy your position. I'm glad I don't have your job right now, quite frankly. Of course, I'm not sure I really want your job after spending one whole year up there with the legislative process. It's a little bit different, but I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate what you're trying to accomplish. you know, it's a shame that the federal government has abdicated its position on this matter. It's a shame that the federal government can't give the state legislators and the state legislatures more direction and have better studies about what is available and what you should be doing and how you should be handling it. But the fact of the matter is we're here because the federal government has not taken this seriously. And, you know, I've had many conversations with Dale, and I recognize that there is some purpose to medicinal marijuana, cannabis oil, and that it does help people. And you're here to try to figure out how the best way is to dispense what you have made legal. And so I go to this, and I had an opportunity to go to the state of Washington recently, and I happened to tour a facility. And in Washington, recreational marijuana and medicinal marijuana, or cannabis, is legal. And they regulate the number of dispensaries that can dispense the marijuana. And not only do they do that, they regulate the manufacturers, and the two are separated. They don't put the two together. And they come under the Liquor and Cannabis Board. It used to be called the Liquor Control Board, but when they made cannabis legal, they just changed the C from control to cannabis. So they didn't have to change any government signs. It just says LCB, Liquor and Cannabis Board. So I thought that was pretty efficient if I'm the way of the government. But you have an opportunity here because you know the licenses that are being issued, and you have a control over the number of licenses that are being issued, or who I should say qualifies for medicinal marijuana. You have the ability to limit and to control not only the manufacturer side, but the dispensary side. And I think that's what y'all are looking for. Again, Ms. Driscoll was very thorough, and I know y'all are very busy, so I don't want to take up a lot of time. There are a number of states that have gone down this path, and PAC will be glad to help you research what has worked and what hasn't worked. And I'm not here at this point to throw any dispersions on what hasn't worked or what has worked. I'm here to give you kind of a general guideline and to answer the question. What we know has failed in opioids is that the production is unlimited. So with the production being unlimited, anybody can get the distribution of the opioids. In this case, because this guy doesn't want me to speak.
That was plain. Now he's like that.
In this case, you have the opportunity, based upon the number of patients that you know are submitting and getting the cannabis, cannabis oil. You know the number of patients you have, so you can not only limit the manufacturing, you can also limit the dispensaries that you put. I do not disagree with Ms. Driscoll in that it's best to have them scattered across the state. And you also have to be able to ensure that those people that need that product for medicinal purposes pay a reasonable price for it. So you don't want to limit it to the extent that people are paying an exorbitant price for something that, quite frankly, in Washington, they were selling, I think they said for $7 a gram. I'm not really sure. I don't remember that, so don't hold me to that. But you have that opportunity because you know the number of people, you know what needs to be manufactured, and you know what needs to be dispensed. I do encourage you to keep the manufacturer separate from the dispensary. I don't think it's a good idea, and this is just from a personal observation, that those who manufacture be the same people that are dispensing it. I think the way it works in Washington works well. There's a control that the government has over it, that the government needs over it, where the regulators can go in and check the manufacturer of the plants. And again, in Washington, and I'm not familiar with horticulture and biology, but they tag their marijuana plants so they know which plant came from which manufacturer and how much is being produced by which manufacturer. And that way you can keep those separate. They also have regulations that allows the regulators, the administrators, to be able to have on-site visits unannounced, simply go upon the premises. They ought to be able to account for the number of plants. And I believe, and Ms. Driscoll may be able to correct me here, in Washington, there's a limit as to the number of plants you can grow at any particular site. And so they know how many plants should be on site, they know at what stages they should be, they know what they're producing it for. One of the differences in Washington is, of course, they can do it for recreational use. So you have that ability. Security issues in Washington, again, I'm using Washington because I just visited that. Those that manufacture it and those that dispense it, 24-hour video surveillance, and they're required to keep that video surveillance for 45 days. They're required to be able to produce that video surveillance anytime law enforcement shows up or anytime someone from the control board shows up, and they are able to view it. Not only do they have 24-hour video surveillance, they also, it has to be in an enclosed, fenced-in area, 6-foot fences with razor wire on the top. 8-foot fences with razor wire on the top. And they also have electronic eyes, laser monitoring. So people that manage to get over the fence, and we haven't had many that have managed to get over the fence or try to go under the fence, that the laser picks them up right away, and there's an alarm that goes right to the police station. Representative Gravely, you asked about an independent, or does it go to the police? They don't have independent security, what we saw. Basically, their sites are so secure that any breach in that security notifies the police department. Now, I did not see any armed guards. I didn't see anything of that nature, but I did see a facility that was quite frankly, it probably as good as Sheriff Woodruff's jail there, probably as good. So it was definitely secure. In addition to having those security measures, they have administrative penalties. Administrative penalties they're subject to regulation by the regulators who come in. I don't know how you plan to regulate the manufacturing, the dispensing. I don't know what agency it will come under. But anyone that breaches their regulations or their policies is subject to administrative fines, and some of them are quite expensive. Now, I have done some research, and I think you know this, and I think this was touched on it. When you do go into the cultivation business and you do have the manufacturing of marijuana, you are going to see an increase in robberies. And that just goes along. You're also going to see people who try to get around the system. I think you can address that with the penalties that the legislature can impose for those type of crimes. And Georgia is not light on crime. No one can say that we are light on crime. So some of the penalties we already have on the books are sufficient that there would be severe penalties for anyone that commits a crime against a manufacturer or someone who's distributing it. That's kind of it in a nutshell. I've got well over 70 pages that I could share with y'all. I don't want to do that here. You've got a whole crowd here that wants to be heard. Just know this, PAC is willing to work with you. PAC is willing to assist you in what you're trying to achieve as public policy, and anything we can do to help research-wise, we're here to help. And I can answer any questions if you like. If you want me to sit down and shut up, I can do that better.
Chairman Gravely has a question for Pete.
Pete, thank you so much for the testimony. I'm going to ask this question. Have you spoken in detail with your counterpart in Washington, and any advice, direction that they were able to give for your association here in Georgia as Washington went into cultivation, some pros and cons, best practices that they were able to say, if Georgia does this, here's what you would need to be able to look at for?
Chairman Gravely, I have, and one of the things is the difference here in Georgia, and we had a whole day just on the way they're going about regulating the marijuana, recreational and medical. One of the things that they talked about was their regulators have sufficient administrative authority and power where those that manufacture and those that dispense know that they have to toe the lines. And when somebody, if a license is pulled, that's financial. You lose a significant amount of money by doing that. The only increase they have seen, and again, remember, they have recreational marijuana, so which is a little bit different than what you're talking. The only increase they have seen, now one thing they have not been able to measure and they acknowledge that recreational marijuana, they don't regulate the THC level. And because they don't regulate the THC level, the manufacturers are complaining about each other because some manufacturers say they have a higher THC level than it actually measures out to. It's kind of the free market thing. One manufacturer saying I'm producing 7% THC, and the other one says it's 16%, and the guy that's producing 16% is really 9%. So they're mad at each other about that. So that's not an issue for us. And I've just lost my train of thought, but, I remember what I was gonna say. One of the problems they're encountering is because they do have recreational marijuana is, how can I say this? The unintended consequence of people eating cookies that are laced with marijuana and feeling different. For example, one of the head regulators there said his grandmother went to visit somebody and they had marijuana brownies, and she ended up feeling pretty good and had to go to the hospital because she's never felt that way before. So we're not going to have that problem here. Okay? But really, the way they have it set up with their regulators and their administrative level, it has really been effective there, and it has not, according to this fella, it has not caused a significant increase in the bureaucracy of the state government because they can do it with the same amount of people that they did it when they had the Liquor Control Board. It's just a matter of that their duties have changed. So now they have added some people, but that addition has been offset by the money that's coming in.
So if I may follow up, so the cost of adding folks to the department or agency has been offset by the revenue or the
Yes.
taxation that's come in from that.
That's correct.
Let me ask you this question, and thank you as we move forward to finding what would work for Georgia. Thank you for your commitment to help us review that legislation, and your advice is definitely welcome in your direction. Thank you very much. In the scenario of, from the Prosecuting Attorney's Council, have they seen an uptick in marijuana, whether it be medicinal, whether it be recreational related crimes or prosecutions dealing with this? You said that there were maybe some that got over the fence or under the fence.
There have been some, and there have been some, particularly when you read the latest article out of Colorado, there have been some increase in robberies. Of course, you know, if you don't regulate the marijuana and it gets out, you can have an increase in marijuana-related driving under the influence. So those type of things have occurred. And Colorado recently had an article that I'll try to get to you about the increase that they have seen when situations happen like that.
And if a final follow-up, do you believe if you removed that recreational component to those states, be it Colorado, be it Washington, that increase would be as significant?
I don't think so. I have no way of knowing. I've been a prosecutor for over 33 years, and you always like to think that crime's going to come down, and to a certain extent it has come down. But anytime you have laws, you have people that are trying to figure out a way to break the laws, and that's one of the things that you have to guard against is how you're going to, if you have these cultivation areas, what security measures you're going to have in place. Not to mention, and I think y'all know this, not to mention is there'll always be a black market. There'll always be a black market, just like anything else, in which people that can profit from another person's addiction or another person's illness or another person's ailments will come in and try to take advantage of that. One of the things that they saw that they were encountering in Washington, and they're trying to put a brake on it, obviously, is the manufacturer of marijuana. They have kept it where the cost is reasonable inside Washington. However, when that same product somehow gets out of Washington, it becomes cost efficient for people to try to transport it out and make money. So that's one of the issues they've encountered is people that come in there, try to get as much medicinal marijuana, cannabis as they can, recreational marijuana as they can, and then smuggle that out of that state so they can sell it for a higher profit outside the state. That's one of the things that they've always been very guarded against. But again, with your ability to basically make sure that you know the amount that's being manufactured and the amount that's being dispensed, you would have more of a control over that situation.
And I have a follow-up on you mentioned Washington and Colorado about the incidence of crime and driving under the influence have increased. Do you know for the states that, for example, Florida and some of the other states of medical only, are you aware of any reports that those states may have, or maybe
No.
that's something we can find?
No, ma'am, but I will look for you. I will look and I will try to get it to Senator Glass or Chairman Bradley.
All right, we've got a question from Deltek.
Once again, Pete, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your candor here today, especially from your position, because I know it wasn't too long ago that somebody dumped this issue in your lap. Yes, they did. Yes, figuratively and literally. But I was very intrigued that you actually kind of took a little bit different route. I really appreciate Ms. Driscoll and her remarks, but almost in an effort to help simplify regulation, you're advocating for less of a vertical integration and allow certain specialists to monitor and regulate the manufacturing side of it and the distribution side of it. And
Mr. Jackson,
did I understand you correctly in that?
well, I'm for keeping it simple.
Right.
As my wife will tell you, I don't understand complex things. And it can be as complex as what to put together as a suit, okay? But, whether or not it's vertical or not, that's not an issue that I would be involved in. I think what's important is how you decide how many manufacturers you're going to have, how you're going to limit that, and where it's going to be dispensed. How you do that and who gets involved would not be an expertise that I have. All I can help you with is the laws that I see in place that have worked in other states and tell you about what has not worked in other states.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. My concern is that with total vertical, you're gonna have to find a really brilliant businessman that's a licensed, pharmacist that's also a master horticulturalist.
All right, next on the agenda, we have Anthony Labordi, owner with Discount Nutrition.
Yes.
Anthony, if you would just briefly introduce yourself, and then you can get right into the
Sure.
presentation.
Have you ever been told you have 30 minutes to prepare for something and you get there and they say you got 10? First of all, thank you to West Georgia, thank you to the committee for having us here. This is truly an honor for us to be part of this discussion. This is something we're really passionate about. We've looked at for a while, and it's just, it's super cool to be here, so we really appreciate it. My name is Anthony Laborde. I'm here with my mentor, my inspiration, my partner, Ms. Mona Machini. Together we own Discount Nutrition in Atlanta, Georgia. We have 2 locations right now, one in Ackworth, Georgia. If you're familiar with the city, it's just north of the city. Takes 75 north, about 30 minutes outside. And then we have the most recent store, which is in Midtown, downtown area. So we're right smack in the middle of everything across from Piedmont Park.
Hold on, Anthony, real quick, I forgot rule 3 today. Everybody reach in and turn your phones off. Or you don't have to turn them off, turn your ringers off. Thank you for the reminder.
And if it seems like I blow through a lot of this stuff, I'm absolutely blowing through it because we have too much content here. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. A little bit about us. I won't go into all the detail. She's the big brains. I'm the big mouth. That covers everything there. Mona started the original store 17, 18 years ago in Ackworth, Georgia. She's a nutritionist. She started it on her own. Her mission was, and that's our mission statement, but really it is to be a channel, to be a conduit of education, of knowledge. There's a lot of junk out there in the market in terms of supplementation, in terms of CBD, across the board, there's a lot of knockoffs. It's our jobs as business owners, as nutritionists, to study that, to understand it, to weed out all the trash, and to provide the highest quality products possible. I have highlighted on there to nourish the body, to heal the body. If you're taking notes, take note of this. When you nourish the body correctly, when you feed it correctly, when you water it, when you get enough rest, when you got the right supplements, organic supplements, your body's designed to heal itself, and it will heal itself. Our immune systems will build, we're feeding it correctly, we're nourishing it, and that's one of the things why we're so passionate about here today, is this is a product that we come across after doing the research that it is absolutely one of those products. It nourishes from head to toe. And when you start studying this and you understand the endocannabinoid system and how the receptors throughout the body work, it'll blow your mind at how powerful this supplement is. And it is, and I won't get into it, but it's our duty to push this through. We were introduced to CBD back in 2015 by one of the companies we do business with called CV Sciences. We were a little skeptical at first. We've seen way more than enough products come through that are fads, that are trash. So we were a little bit skeptical of people touting this. We started off with a few SKUs. We had 8 to 10 units a month that we were selling. That's about typical of some of our products. But around mid 16, 17, we started getting more and more customers that were asking for specific strains. They were asking for specific products. It started to get our attention. We have, in one store, we have 2,500 SKUs. We have 5,000 SKUs overall. So when there's that much demand and asking for one product, that gets our attention. So we started researching on our own. What we quickly realized is that this wasn't a fad. We had people coming back talking about it. And I'm going to show you some numbers here in a minute about our sales, that a lot of it's recurring sales. This product works. It heals people. It helps people. So that was our introduction. What we discovered, as I mentioned, this was one of the product that is a whole body, all natural, pure supplement that does nourish and heal with almost zero side effects. In the years that we've been selling it and all the products, we've had one return. That's huge for our store. We usually get a few a day. And the one return was she drank the whole bottle and she was nauseated. So we took it back. But that's the worst side effect that we've had in all that time. The only medicine whose main goal is to identify problems within. One of the things I love about talking about CBD is that its main goal is to bring the body into homeostasis. That's to bring it into balance. When your body's in balance, when all your systems are running together, you begin to build your immune system, you begin to heal yourself. So that's the beauty of this product. And also we have long-term science now, and that science-backed data to back it up, and clinical trials to back it up. That's another thing we had heard for the longest time, is that you don't have any data backing it up. Well, now we do, and we have results. Pardon me for moving so quickly. One of the things I'll talk about the vendors that we deal with, we require transparency into your company. This is transparency into our company. This is just an example of where the market's going. Prior to, and this starts in January of 2018, prior to January, we were doing $1,000, $1,500 a month for about a year and a half. You can see in January, 2,000, then it went up, then it was 4,000. Last month we did over $9,000 in sales just off of CBD. That's insane for a company our size, and that amount of growth so quickly. The other reason I wanted to bring this up is the demand is there, and people are asking for it, and they're going for it. We feel blessed to be in an opportunity or in a position that we can provide high quality supplements to them. Unfortunately, that's not the case. There's a lot of trash out there. And those people, that's just what's coming to us. There's a lot of people going and getting gas stations, supermarkets. It says CBD, it's gotta be CBD. And we'll touch on in a second why that's so dangerous to do that. But just a representation of what we're experiencing, the customers that are coming to us, and where this market is going. Oh, and as of last night, I ran numbers, and we'll break $10,000 this month on CBD. That's crazy for us. The criteria that we use this for all vendors, but specifically for CBD, we have a checklist that we go through with them. We will not carry your product unless you meet all of these items. Number one, and this is vitally important, sourcing is crucial. Where that CBD comes from, where it's grown, the soil that it's in, I can't stress that enough, and the reason why, and many people already know this, hemp plant is a hyper accumulator. What that means is it absorbs everything. Anything in the soil, even from the smallest amounts to the largest amounts of toxins, leads, heavy metals, pesticides, germicides, you name it, hemp will grab a hold of it. It's so powerful of an absorbent to the point where they use it at Chernobyl. I may be familiar with that, where it's soaking up a radiation from the soil. That's crazy to me too. It's a powerful, powerful plant, and it's a statement to how important it is to put it in organic soil, clean soil. I know y'all aren't for cultivation here, but it's a must. If you move forward with this, cultivation in Georgia and having control over that is just crucial, just because of what can get in there and what eventually gets into your body. We talked a little bit about vertical integration. That's another one that's a checkpoint for us. We require that you have vertical integration. And for us, that's seed to shelf. That's a common term you'll hear quite a bit. And I have samples here of products that we sell. At any point, I can take one of those products and I can go to Charlotte's Web or I can go to CV Sciences and I can give them a batch number. And what they'll give back to me is the complete certificate of analysis on that specific one, where it was grown, what's in it, everything. When we're dealing with cancer patients, diabetes, AIDS, cancer, we go down the list, it's crucial they know what's in those products. We can't have them going to gas stations and buying this stuff. So this is why this is important for us. Number 3, produced and packaged in an FDA regulated facility. That kind of speaks for itself. They have much higher, stricter regulations. We have a way of holding them accountable when they're in one of those facilities. CO2 extraction. You'll hear a lot about CO2 extraction or chemical extraction. It's cheaper to do chemical extraction, and a lot of these companies that are selling products out on the market, that's what they're doing because it's cheap. However, when you do that, you damage the plant, you damage the cannabinoids. CO2 extraction, we sell a product called NO2, that threw me off, is very expensive, but it ensures that you have the purity of the product. So the companies that are making that investment and doing it, those are the ones that we want to do business with.
Anthony, real quick,
Yes,
before we
please.
go to the next slide, going back to the traceable batches, and Pete had mentioned some of the plants are tagged, I think in
Yes.
Washington. And I assume y'all are kind of talking about the same
Same
thing.
thing, right.
Is
That's
it usually
seed to
like
shelf.
RFID tags, or what?
You know, and I can't speak to this completely. I don't know. I think some of them do use RFIDs, but I'm not positive. I can get that information.
Okay, that'd be great, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, it's another slide on criteria. We're pretty strict about it. Whole plant or full spectrum. What that means is a lot of companies now are using isolates. So where they isolate out a piece of the plant, what you lose, and I'll show you a slide here in a second, is there's much more in these plants than just CBD and THC. Carboxy, I may have mispronounced that, but there's a number of, what do you call it? Polyphenols. She's the nutritionist and the genius here. There's a lot of other stuff in there that's beneficial, and it's crucial that they use the whole plant. Again, it goes back to, if I'm a company and I want to save some money, they're doing these isolates and they're rushing stuff to the market. Another point of why you have to get quality stuff. Members of essential trade organizations, this is important because it holds people accountable. These organizations, they analyze the companies, they certify the companies. It's important for us that they're a part of these and which ones they're a part of. I'll show some testimonies here in a second, but we're in the business for our customers. When customers give us feedback and they say, this is working for me, and that gets high on the list. That means a lot, especially if these patients are in severe pain and it helps them, and they come back in tears saying, I've never felt this way, I've been on opioids, I've been on this and that, and now I finally found something that helps. That's huge for us. And then customer support, from a business point of view, that's important for us. We want our employees to be trained. We want to have the most up-to-date knowledge as soon as it comes out. We want to be on the front end of it, so that's important. And then to me, the last one there, third-party unbiased lab test. To me, that's the most important one. I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm a data guy. I need to see numbers, I need to see charts. When they provide that to me, I feel a whole lot better about what I'm providing my customers. And I'll show you some examples here in a second. Actually, on this slide. So this is an example of a very good detailed certificate of analysis. This one was for CV Sciences, one of the companies that we deal with. And you can see the sections of it there and how they break it out. It's not just important to look at cannabinoid profiling, but you need to look at pesticides, you need to look at germicides, you need to look at have on their terpenes and microbiological screening. Again, this is a hyper accumulator plant. It absorbs everything. You want to know what's in that plant, where it came from, everything. Again, this is a very good one. They're not all that detailed. We would hope that they would be. And here's another example here. So here's just some screenshots that I took of some lab tests. On the left-hand side, that's a CD Science internal one. We would prefer that it be third party. You can tell me what you want to tell me, but I'd rather have an unbiased party come do that. The one in the middle was the one I showed. The one on the right was a specific test for heavy metals. So there's companies that will just look for those toxins in there, lead, mercury, et cetera. So again, very detailed. They're all signed off on. They all have scientists that back them up in the labs. And again, we prefer that it's third-party testing. This was the chart that I mentioned to you about whole plant full spectrum labeling. This is why it's important. CBD itself, yes, it's fantastic and it does a tremendous amount of good for people. When you add in the rest of the plant, it just begins to magnify and it gets better and stronger and stronger. And I'll let you know, that's some pictures being taken. Again, when you remove out the full spectrum and you just do isolates, you lose all of that. Just another benefit. This is a little bit easier to read. This is part of why we're here today. CBD is great, and CBD with THC, the synergy of those two together. Quickly, the brands that we use, we currently use Charlotte's Web and CD Sciences. We're in the approval process for Haley's Hope. I know that's the big one we hear a lot about. It's the one that the law was based on. As soon as we get a certificate of analysis for a few of their products, we're moving ahead because they meet all the rest of the criteria. Again, it's just important to us that we can sit down with a patient and say, here's what's in your product. A lot of them go, but it works, but you just don't know what you're getting. So that's why it's so important to us. And I'll break each one of these down specifically. Charlotte's Web has a lot going on there, but this came to our attention mainly because of the patients. We had patient after patient after patient come in asking specifically for Charlotte's Web, and we would try to sell them. We have CD Science, we have that. I have Charlotte's Web. I have Charlotte's Web. Our central store in Midtown is right by Emory University. We have doctors at Emory that are prescribing Charlotte's Web, which is bizarre to me. When we would get doctors in there from Emory doing that, that's obviously we have to bring it in. There's a market share snippet on there, 6.3%. I understand that a popularity contest does not make a product good, but a lot of times it'll get your attention to why is it so popular, and that's really what got our attention. They are leading the market. CD Sciences, which is CBD oil beneath it, 3.6%. They're right behind it. They're part of Realm of Caring, which is huge in the industry. They've been all over the place. That's their certificate of analysis on the right-hand side. The Brightfield Group, they did a study based off of the largest online community of cannabis users, entrepreneurs, business people, and that's a statement they came away with that Charlotte's Web is their favorite. So that was the main reason we brought it in, and then the sales now are just off the chart, and the feedback on it.
Anthony, real
Yes, sir.
quick, just to let everybody know, because I see people taking pictures of the slide. All slides from presentations today will be on the website. So,
And I have extra hard copies if y'all want to do.
What's the website?
Website?
On the House website.
it's on the House website. It's house.ga.gov.
Or dncnutrition.com.
Charlotte's Web, the test has said that Charlotte's Web has 0.6% THC in it, which is higher than the 0.3% that officially industrial hemp is. So is it legal
No.
to?
Can you speak to that? What, you said it shows.
Questions
I'm
from
sorry.
Craig, just for sake of time.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'll get done with this here in a second, we'll address that. Okay, we'll come back to it. I'll make note of that and we'll come back to you. Again, CD Sciences, they check the box on all these. Certificate of analysis, world-class customer service, and they've been, now the difference is, and this is a big differentiator for us, CD Sciences is not as potent, it doesn't have the highest dosage as Charlotte's Web does. So, but not every element needs 40 milligrams of CBD in it, you need 3 milligrams or 5, migraines and stuff. So it's touching on a different market, but absolutely a top-notch product. I mentioned Haley's Hope. I'm going through the process. They're part of the Flowering Hope Foundation, which was big for us. the fact that the law was based on Haley soap, that got our attention, and we have customers asking for it. So we're pretty excited about that one. And Bluebird, if you are familiar with another one, we're looking at Bluebird and bringing them in as well. Customer testimonials, honestly, I could spend days up here giving you stories, and I only have 2 slides and a couple of them, but it's mind-blowing for us, that the amount of people that come in and the amount of ailments that they're talking about. And I'll have some listed here in a second, and I'll just touch on these. Sonia, she's a mother of 6. Her daughter has had severe epilepsy since she was 18 months old. She was having 30 to 40 seizures a day. She was spending close to $5,000 a month on diets, on meds, on counseling, you just go down the list. And the reason I know that is she was in one day and she bought 2 of our CBDs. It's our biggest bottle, it's the most expensive one. I was like, oh, it's like $600 a month, and you're dropping on that. And she just laughed and she said, oh, just a savings. I mean, she was spending $5,000 a month. So she's more than happy to spend $600. And the results, her daughter now has seizures every couple of days. She'll have like 1 seizure. And that's just huge for her. I mean, she cries when she's in there. She's so passionate about it. And I believe Sherry or Jerry, she's the mother of a 17-year-old boy. It's a very similar situation, severe epilepsy since birth, 20 to 30 seizures per day. Got on this. The thing that she touched on that we see a lot are the secondary benefits. So somebody's taking it for seizures. What she was telling me was, you can't imagine the anxiety of a parent that has a child that has seizures, that you don't know when it's coming. And you don't know if you're out and about. And she said all day long, it's just severe anxiety, severe anxiety. So she's taking it for her anxiety and giving it to her daughter to get rid of the epilepsy. So this, again, it's a whole body nutritional supplement that takes care of everything. It goes in and identifies where you need help without you knowing that you need help, and brings the body to homeostasis.
Anthony, we got some questions from the committee, if you don't mind entertaining those.
Yeah, no, please.
Chairman Gravett, first.
Anthony, thank you so much for your testimony. Specifically, I want to ask, to start the line of questioning is, in your experience, do you see folks coming in who truly have either been on opioids trying to treat the symptoms that they've been diagnosed with or the ailment that they're suffering from, and finding, as you mentioned in your speech or your presentation, have they responded with, I've been able to come off of the opioids?
So the slide that I'm on now, and you have it in here, there's a list of customer testimonies. You look at the brand at the bottom, branding, opioid addiction. That was the whole reason he came in there, and it's been able to get him on with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Secondly, of the customer testimonies, in your experience, have you had folks coming in who truly are looking for answers to treat the symptoms that they have that opioids either are not treating or they feel are just destroying their quality of life, as opposed to those who are coming in looking for a recreational fix or looking for something to use recreationally?
Honestly, and maybe you can speak for the other store, I haven't had one come in for recreation. It's all been for this. We have other stuff for recreation.
Right.
It's another part of the store.
We have a customer that has severe back pain.
We can't hear.
Come to the mic.
We have a customer that has severe back pain for a long time and was on opiates for a long time, but he also owns his own business, so he could not focus and operate on opiate. And when he started on the advanced formula of Charlotte Web, he was immediately off the opiates. He was able to get back to his business. He said his pain level tremendously decreased. It did not go away, but he was able to be functional and back to his life again. So that was one of our customers that made us, we did not even recommend that product for him. Somebody told him, go try it. This guy nutrition selling the advanced Charlotte's Web, and he came in the second day. He came back to the store talking about, he was in tears. It does. Most of the customers that walk into the store here, it's a word of mouth that's actually going into the market right now and driving this market, because everyone is sharing their own experience with what's going on. And when they come to us and we say, yes, here's that, we try to help with the dosing, with the selection, and when they come and try it, we have them text us or call us within the day or within the week. That's the feedback that we're seeing out of the retail point of view.
And if follow up, your store will not carry any type of
product that hasn't been tested, or that you can follow, I guess, the batch number on where it's been made, how it's been made?
On a daily
Certificate of
basis,
analysis.
and it's not exaggeration, we have people that come in and they say, we have cheap, better pricing, you have more profit margin, and the way I treated, I'm the buyer, so the way I treated CBD was in the same level that I treated other supplements in the store, is I'm not looking for that quick buck, I want to make sure my customers, they have hands on a good quality, effective, and safe products. When it came to the CBD, I noticed how crucial it is for us to provide them with that one. So a lot of the companies, when they come and say, we're gonna save you money, this and this, I don't even look at that. If it doesn't have all of these requirements, we basically do not carry them. And like I said, Charlotte's Web is one of the ones that actually the seizure patient that we have, she was referred to, she moved from Miami, and her daughter was under the care of Miami Eagleton Children's Hospital, and that's what they had her on, the Charlotte's Web 1500. When she came down to Georgia, and she stopped buying from me. I lost my train of thought.
Hold on, before you regain your train of thought, I wanted, for the record.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're saying that the Miami Children's Hospital
Yes,
had the little girl on Charlotte's Web?
yes, the cannabis clinic there.
They were treating her on campus with the Charlotte's Web?
Yes, and then when she moved down to our store, and this is the lady that we talked about, she's in tears to be able to find it right away and come to buy it. Her daughter has exactly the same stories of Charlotte's Peachy. She said that she came to know her daughter only the past 2 years, and she's 6 years old. She was bound to a wheelchair, she was on a feeding tube, there was no cognitive whatsoever communication between them, and she brought her daughter to the store. She's able to help her to walk without help. She's talking, she's interacting with her mom. Of course, the daughter is not 100% natural, but to the mom, this is kind of like, to us, it makes us feel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just for the record, for those in the audience, Charlotte Figge is the little girl upon which Charlotte's Web is based off of.
Yes.
And the rest is just customer testimony, so I'll take any more questions.
Any more questions from Shannon?
I'll just, maybe more of a comment than a question. I mean, obviously, we all know the benefits of CBD, but we can order that online and have that shipped to us directly from Charlotte's Web Daily Soap. So while it's great that people have a local way, they can go to you and they can get it, they don't have to have it, they don't have to wait
Have you tried
10 to 14 days. Oh, yeah. I mean, we've used Charlotte's Web, we've used Daily Soap. I mean, CBD is easily accessible. The purpose of this commission is to figure out how we can get up to 5% THC into the hands of patients. So how often do you have people coming in saying, hey, I have this medical card, I heard I can get CBD, and then they find out, you know what, CBD is not going to cut it, they actually need
For some
THC.
people, you're absolutely right. And this is where we appreciate all the work, because for some people, they need higher than 0.3 of THC. And that's where we were asked to speak out of the detail of the customer's testimony on the CBD by itself with less than 0.3 of THC. Now imagine if you get the medicinal marijuana that's combined with the benefits of the CBD. You're absolutely right. Yes.
Yeah, there's a market.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Ms. Machini, Mr. LeBoard, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, I've got Greg Rebold with Georgia Pharmacy Association. Greg, come on up. Just a brief introduction of yourself and your association.
Thank you, Chairman and committee members. My name is Greg Rebold. I'm the General Counsel for the Georgia Pharmacy Association, also VP of Public Policy, and appreciate everybody's time and opportunity to talk on this important issue. And so the Georgia Pharmacy Association's in an interesting position on this, in that we are not advocating for or against the sale of low THC oil. I'm going to be precise with the language here, low THC oil, as that's statutorily defined. Again, we're not advocating for or against, but we certainly have some strong thoughts were the state to move forward in terms of cultivation and in particular sale in the state of Georgia, and so appreciate the opportunity to share that perspective. In connection with any prescription monitoring regime, any prescription drug regime the patient enters into in the state of Georgia or begins, pharmacists are there, and they're there to help walk patients through the process. They identify contraindications, drug-drug interactions, adverse reactions, patient adherence, and they counsel in connection with all of those issues. That's core of what pharmacists do in connection with every prescription drug, whether it be a Control 5 all the way to a Control 2. Pharmacists are there, and they're there to care for the patient. When you talk about low THC oil, it's an interesting issue because in many ways, all of the needs for pharmacy are heightened. And so, specifically, because of the way it's couched with federal law, it's tricky. There haven't been a lot of studies. There have been some, and they certainly show some adverse effects, contraindications, most of them not severe, but there can be that as well. But so the studies aren't there, and any of you get any drug, you get any prescription drug at all, there's a package insert, and it sets forth all of these things and all of these studies that identifies these things. And so there's sort of a lack of information in connection with this. And I think information is growing, right? And it's going to grow and grow, and it's going to, I think, continue to evolve. But on top of the lack of information, the patients who can access low THC oil in Georgia are sick. These are serious conditions, and they need this, but they're also often on many other medications, and because of their weakened conditions, the risks of adverse events and contraindications, drug-drug interactions, all of those things are magnified. And then you get into things like formulary and drug therapy variations, and it makes it more complicated still. And so our position is, as much as every patient needs a pharmacist to help counsel with these things, those are just simply magnified in connections with patients who are on low THC oil. I think also pharmacists are well equipped from a perspective of diversion or potential misuse in terms of identifying potential misuse, and they're also well equipped to deal with, should the Georgia legislature decide to move forward in this regard, things like monitoring programs, state monitoring programs. You have the ephedrine, pseudoephedrine registry, which is real time. You have the prescription drug monitoring program, which pharmacists upload information every 24 hours. And so again, pharmacists are equipped to identify misuse. They're also equipped to work with the state in terms of providing that information to assure there's no diversions. Having said all of that, and here's where the plot thickens, because of federal law, pharmacy is in an odd position. And every pharmacy that's registered in the state of Georgia has a DEA license, right? And those DEA licenses are subject to be pulled for violation of federal law. On top of that, complicating matters still, dramatic. Complicating matters still are every pharmacy enters into payer agreements, or virtually every pharmacy. And almost every one of those payer agreements contain a provision. That provision says something to the effect of, this pharmacy shall engage in no conduct violated with federal law. And so until the federal law changes, pharmacies are really, their hands are tied in certain ways. So our request would be, should this committee move forward, that pharmacies certainly aren't mandated to sell low THC oil. That said, we think absolutely patients deserve and need to have the benefit of pharmacy if the state moves forward. And so we look at states like Minnesota, states like Connecticut, where any entity that's licensed to sell low THC oil is required to employ a pharmacist and have a pharmacist on staff. And that's, again, we're not advocating for or against, but if the state moves forward, we think that that's reasonable. We think that it is going to put patients in the best position to improve outcomes and have good drug therapy results. And with that, certainly happy to answer any questions.
Are there any states where the pharmacies are mandated?
No, sir. No, Senator. Not that I'm aware of. None where the pharmacies are mandated.
Just where there's a pharmacist that is required to be at the site?
That's correct. Required to be on site, required to be there and administer or dispense the low THC oil to the patient and offer counseling in that regard.
Is that pharmacist still subject to the same federal laws that the other pharmacies?
So, good question. The pharmacies are the ones that enter into contracts, right? And the pharmacies are the ones that hold DEA licenses. Pharmacists individually do not. And so we think that certainly takes some of that out of the equation.
Fair enough. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question, if you don't mind. When you say that you would recommend that a pharmacist be required to be part of the entity, just to be clear, do you think they would need to be involved with the cultivation process as well versus manufacturing and formulation
So
and dispensing?
Oh, excuse me, yeah, in that regard, I would defer to other experts certainly, but in terms of the dispensing, the counseling of the patients, doing the drug-drug interactions, monitoring for effectiveness, dosage, things like that, at that point, we feel strongly that that's where a pharmacist needs to be involved. And so I think if you're looking at it sort of in a spectrum, that would probably, in many ways, be sort of the last step in the process, where the low THC oil would be handed off to the patient.
And if a pharmacist were to work for an entity in that position, would that in any way affect their good standing with the Board of Pharmacy in the state of Georgia?
So, again, I'm not equipped necessarily to speak for the Board of Pharmacy in that regard, but we think that would be something that could be looked at and addressed. If it's in compliance with state law and the state is requiring this, we think that could be reconciled fairly easily if it needs to be reconciled.
Thank you.
If we did not require the pharmacist with the third-party testing, would that take care of some of the issues that you think that we need a pharmacist on site for?
Don't necessarily think so. And there's many entities out there, as the previous gentleman indicated, all sorts of claims. Some I'm sure are great, some are not. But again, what we're talking about isn't necessarily the quality. What we're talking about is the patient care, right? Any prescription drug that gets dispensed to a patient in Georgia today is dispensed via a pharmacist, and that pharmacist is there to check for drug-drug interactions, contraindications, monitor for adverse effects, and no lab out of state that does a test would accomplish that.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
For being here and testifying. Would the Board of Pharmacy oppose or support the federal government moving this substance from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 2?
Thank you, Representative. So first off, just a clarification, Georgia Pharmacy Association, not the board. I don't want to get in trouble with my friends at the Board of Pharmacy in that regard. Certainly can't speak for them, and I don't know what position that they would take. But I think the Pharmacy Association would support that move federally to change schedules.
If I may follow up, is any indication, has there been a formal statement of we as an association oppose or we support, or we're not weighing in at this time?
So, and happy to provide, we do have a formal policy position and certainly happy to provide that to the committee. The gist of it is, that we neither are advocating for or against, but believe if it moves forward, I'm being redundant here, that a pharmacist needs to be involved. And I think that the second portion of that is that federally and ultimately be moved from a Schedule 1. Yes.
Dale, you had a question?
Yes, thank you for coming. You happened to mention kind of one of my biggest concerns and actual fears while I'm 100% support for quality care and for accurate care, because I've interacted with many of these parents and have questions about what about this other medication. But you also mentioned Minnesota, and one of the worst things that my friends and families have seen in the state of Minnesota, it has been so overly regulated that they went from an illegal medicine that cost $135 to a legal medicine that costs $400 to $500. And that's worse than it being legal when you cannot physically afford it. And it's part of our job here on this committee to hopefully find that good compromise where we still have good quality care but also regulated and safely. So my question to you would be, would you be open, and would your committee, board, or however you define it, what if there was some other third-party entity where each dispensary, gave that patient their information, said, hey, contact this instead? Because my concern is one pharmacist per dispensary is extremely expensive. It's extremely expensive. And in the real world, that is unrealistic. And so my question is, do you support a group of pharmacists to where, all the dispensaries sent them to this one or two pharmacists that handle consultation for the whole state?
So, that's something we would definitely look at. I mean, if a pharmacist is involved in consultation for patients, certainly sensitive to price, et cetera. But, if this is for for medical conditions, and this is, and it's for the most serious of
But also not covered by insurance.
Not covered by insurance. Physicians need to order, and pharmacists need to be involved in the dispensing or distribution to counsel patients. These are people who have serious conditions, and they deserve a high level of patient care and the expertise that pharmacy can provide. Definitely an interesting suggestion that you made. And again, I'm not going to sit here and advocate for the whole structure of how Minnesota, is set up and speak as to cost. But in terms of having a pharmacist there to speak to patients, again, I don't think it would be cost prohibitive. And certainly, if this is for medical purposes, we think that it consistent with all medication in Georgia. It really, the ethics
Should be
compel it.
covered under insurance. Is that what you're saying?
Hey, I can talk to you all day about insurance. That would be my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Not the charge of this committee. All right, Mr. Ravenwood, no further questions, so thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, and would welcome to come back and talk about insurance, so thank you.
That's another statement.
It is.
Okay, next up, we got Sheriff Pope from Jasper County. Sheriff, can you just give a brief introduction and hop right into your presentation?
Yes, my name is Donnie Pope. I'm the sheriff of Jasper County, and I believe I have drawn the extremely short straw today. I will tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you ask me, and I don't speak for the Sheriff's Association, I am telling you this as an individual who is trying to speak from a somewhat educated standpoint, I don't think that there is anybody in this room who does not want a child to get some medicine that will help them with seizures or relieve their pain or fix them.
Not from the crowd, come on.
Now,
Be respectful.
I think that if we took a survey in the room, that we are not only talking about what we believe to be the availability of oil in a medicinal purpose. I mean, there's probably, I would say, a majority in the room that would like to see a full legalization and know that this is the first step. Because this has got to happen before the door is opened to be able to let the other come in. And I will tell you, y'all, as plain as I know how, there's a lot of people who stand to make a lot of money if this happens. And don't think that they are in it for a genuine purpose to be able to say, look at all these kids and people we are helping with medicine. This is what we have to be very careful of. There are several things that I would just like to touch on to answer a few of the questions that came along earlier. We talked about the impact on law enforcement. That is my greatest concern. About a year ago, October of 17, I went to Colorado and I met at a symposium to discuss the impact of legalization on Colorado 5 years later. During those conversations with my counterparts from Colorado, there were some great concerns, y'all, and a lot of it boiled down to cultivation. Now, it cost an astronomical amount of money on our part as sheriffs, on our local taxpayers already, to combat what is clearly illegal narcotics, but also prescription narcotics that are being used in a non-prescription manner. And so one of the justifications was, well, let's make this available to our people to help them. 5 years later, Colorado is second in the nation in overdoses on opioids. Did that help their problem? The answer is no. That did not help their problem. In fact, when you start talking about the impacts, and I believe, Senator, you said it earlier, the question was, are these numbers being calculated and would they be skewed based off of a strictly medical state versus a recreational state? I think that is absolutely clear. Yes, it would make a difference. But what changed was somebody getting killed in an automobile accident every 6.5 days in the state of Colorado to every 2.5 days in Colorado. It increased 151% based off of an impaired driver off of marijuana. When you stop and you think about other impacts on law enforcement, and you talk about youth very specifically, there was a doctor that testified before that board, and he said he was in a 6-county district, which those counties are very large. He said 27% of the children that were born in their district tested positive for THC. And when they confronted the mother about their newborn child testing positive, their response was, it's legal.
Were there birth events?
You know, when you stop and you look back at traditional things that have happened, you stop and you look back at the tobacco industry, there was no belief that nicotine was dangerous or even addictive until recently. And now, look at the medical cost associated with the treatment of what is known to be cancerous materials produced by tobacco companies. Yo, why would we expect things like this to be any different? And now listen, I have got 2 minor youngins that I love as much as anybody else. I love more than anything else in the world. And if my youngin was in a situation where I had to find the medical care of something that would work, if it took moving to Florida, I'd move to Florida. If it took going somewhere where I could take care of my kid, I would go take care of my kid. I haven't been in a position of where Mr. Jackson was or Miss Cloud. And I know that would tear me up. I would want to fix whatever it is that I could fix. But I don't know if cultivation in the state of Georgia, even though there are questions about it, really needs to be considered. Because let me explain a small implementation of what's going to happen in law enforcement. We're going to go from a black market, not necessarily a white market. What we're going to do is we're going to create a gray market. And that gray market is going to be this. The reference was made by Pete just a little while ago. Man, I sure do hate having to follow him. He's always a great dynamic speaker. I've heard him several times. Listen, the reference was made to Sheriff Woodruff's jail. Guess what, y'all? I run a jail too. Sheriff, you ever had contraband get in your jail? You ever had methamphetamines get in your jail? You know what? Get it in mine. So now you can say whatever you want to about the security level of a jail and a facility. Let me tell you something, you ain't gonna stop it. I do everything possible. Y'all want me to tell you what kind of sheriff I am? Let me tell you. You know, in school, you had that teacher that you could pretty much go in their classroom and short of somebody getting hurt or something being broke couldn't be fixed, you could do just about whatever you wanted to. And then you had that kind of that total that when you went in that teacher's room, you knew you better sit down and shut your mouth and do your work because that's what was expected. That's me. You can ask my folks. People perform to the level that they're held to. As strict as we try to make sure, Sheriff, that we take care of that facility and make it as secure and safe as possible, people still get hurt in our jail and people still bring contraband in it. Ma'am, the reason that they don't want outside law enforcement working in those facilities that you were talking about is because they don't have control over those employees when they are law enforcement. They want to hire their folks who, if they want them to look the other way, they will look the other way. We are fooling ourselves if we don't think something's going to be going out the back door. I'm telling you.
Go out the back door on the...
Hold on, let's be respectful. Even though we are going to disagree on this at some level, let's still remain in a posture of respect.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the committee? Sheriff.
I certainly would like to thank the sheriff for standing here and echoing what I have concerns about. Anytime that you're going to do something new like this, we all have to agree that good and bad can come out of it. And it's our job as sheriffs, all 159 of us, to make sure that our county is run as safe as possible. And so it's hard for us to stand here, or them to stand here and echo that. I know these are good men, and that's why I serve on this committee, because I really want to help people. I really want to see people get the help that they need, but we also have to understand that there are risks that a lot of y'all will never see, those fights that we'll have to go through that a lot of y'all will never know about. And so we just have to understand that, and I just appreciate you taking the time and trying to explain that to us.
Thank you. And now, legislature, I'm not asking for more work. You guys, in state law, there's about 600 times it says the sheriff shall. I think sometimes when there's a question as to exactly what we're going to do with this, we just say, hey, let's let the sheriffs handle that, let's put it on them. I will tell you, if it does go to the point that you are looking, and I'm asking you not to, I'm asking you right up front, don't let the cultivation be in Georgia. If you do insist on that, I would put that with the money to support the staff on the sheriff that is being grown in his county. And I will tell you, I don't trust anybody else to regulate it any more than I do. Not knocking the state. I like those guys. We work well with them. But if it's going to be grown in my county, I want to be able to have authority over it. And I don't think that is an unreasonable question.
Shannon, did you have a question?
Well, I just want to say, yeah, as a parent of a child, I mean, I appreciate you being here, but I take offense to the fact that you're telling me that to treat my child, I have to move to another state.
Didn't it? That is absolutely not my intention, and that's not what I want you to do.
We're talking about this bottle of oil right here, that for me to legally get it, I would have to move to another state. Right now, I would be getting this illegally for my daughter here in Georgia, and I guess I certainly appreciate your concerns about the recreational market, but we're talking about medical for the 5,000 patients who are registered. Nobody's going to pay $150 for this bottle, go through the process of getting a card from their doctor when they can go down the street and get street weed right now if they really want it. People that are sick need this medicine.
There's no further questions, but Sheriff, I appreciate you being here, I really do. And I think it's important that all of us hear both sides of this issue. It really is. Because we've got to address some things on the front end if we're going to make this happen. You know, we have a crisis right now in this country with opioids. And we have to learn from that. We have to learn what they did wrong so that does not go wrong with this. Otherwise, the whole thing is going to be shut down. So, Sheriff, I do appreciate you being here.
Planning. I'd encourage you, search every avenue. Talk to those law enforcement in those other states who are throwing their hands up in the air. I met with two of them 2 weeks ago in Washington, D.C., and they said if we had this to do over again, we would scream as loud as we could because it has drastically affected our offices. And we have a tough time right now, just making it as it is.
Fair enough. Well, we appreciate you keeping this up. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we've got Dwayne Orrick with the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to be brief because I know that, people are getting a little restless and been here for a while. I want to thank you for what you do. Last year was my first full-time year at the legislature, and I don't think people have any idea what you do as legislators and as members of the board going around the state, and plus being there for those 40-plus days. We know that this issue is it's going to be hard to. There's no consensus in our association as to what's going on. I know that I'll be in a meeting next week, and I'll be in a national meeting next month, and I have a better idea to talk to some of our counterparts in other states. But like the sheriffs, we are a little concerned that in many states, medicinal use has been the kind of gateway
to eventually going towards recreational use. And as the sheriff's, said, this is kind of like are we boiling the frog? We're incrementally moving towards that. And I know that's not your intent, but that may be the intent of other people. We're supportive of the medical needs. I cannot imagine what the families are going through. I'm in support of getting that medicine or that opioid as inexpensively as you can for your children. But with every action, there's a responsibility, and there's also irresponsible people who act on things that are trying to do the benefit of what you're trying to reach out for a very important need. I have more questions I believe than answers at this point, but I think in the long term, even for those people, particularly adults, at what point do we say THC is an impaired level for driving? What effect is this going to have on workers' compensation for adults and our businesses? And I think Pete brought up a really good point earlier when he talked about how do we ensure that, kind of what you alluded to just a second ago, that the production doesn't include above the supply. And so there's an incentive for people who start small with the eye of going big into new markets to make up that difference. And so I think those are all issues on regulations. I've kind of put together some of the things as how do we make sure that, much like we have pill mills with doctors, that we're not going to have doctors doing the same thing with this. The manufacturing, who's going to select it, and how do we avoid those legislation, those lawsuits that are going to occur? And if you do have somebody that's producing or manufacturing, what kind of security and permits are going to go for those people? And at the same time, I've been around for almost 40 years, and I see how something very small becomes very big, and the next thing you know, you have another state agency that's designed just to do this. And you're talking about a very complex issue that we want to address in a very simple manner. And if we don't approach this with a lot of moderation, a lot of thought, and a lot of wisdom, we're going to make the same mistakes. And I think other states may, and I hope I can gather some information I'll share with you next month as to what some of our other states are saying where they may have made mistakes and what are the best practices. I'm sure that we all here want to address this need for these children and these adults. And I've seen individuals personally who had the benefits of THC and how it improved when they had terminal diseases and the quality of their life. And so once you see that, it's hard to kind of take a hard-nosed approach to these issues. But I think also we got to look at the long term as what can be the unintended consequences or what can you do wrong with the best intentions now, and identifying those issues. Then I think working together we can kind of mitigate those. But one of the issues I know that we've discussed is that incentive model for people to expand their market to improve their income. And that would be the issue I think that the sheriffs and the police chiefs are really concerned as they're going to try to push it beyond this. If I have any questions, I'll be happy to answer what little knowledge I have on this issue.
No questions, but all your questions are what we're tasked with trying to figure out. And you're right, it is a very complex issue, and it's not something that I don't think anybody up here takes lightly. And we appreciate your input.
I think that everybody needs to come to the table with an open mind of what we need to do and with a long-term approach and make sure we don't go the wrong direction.
Agreed. Thank you. All right, now that moment you've all been waiting for, public comment. So, like I said last week, we ran out of time. So, or last month, whenever it was, but so I'm gonna pick up where we left off, and if I call your name, come to the microphone, and if I don't see anybody stand up, I'll just go to the next name, and we'll just keep going. So, first up, Mark Howell. Are you Mark? No. You're not Mark. Okay. If I call a name, don't stand up. I'm just messing with you. Grace Byrne. Is Grace here? Okay. Lisa Germain? Yes. Yes. Lisa, no. Stephen McCall? No Stephen. Stanley Atkins? No Stanley. Bridget Latourie? No Bridget. Franz Carranza? Here. Robert Bowles? Okay. All right. Keisha Braswell. You still here, Keisha? Keisha, if you come up, just be brief because we do have a page and a half, so keep it a couple minutes and just give us a brief introduction of yourself and make your comments. Again, back to our house rules. Treat everybody with respect, and we're not here to discuss recreational use of marijuana. That being said, the floor is all yours, Keisha.
Thank you for your time. I am Keisha Braswell, and I'll just be before you for a few moments. I am with Alliance for Black Lives. Alliance for Black Lives is a social justice organization. We fight the three evils of society based off of Dr. King's teachings, which is racism, poverty, and militarism. Militarism is when you invest more money in policing and militaries than you do to social uplift. So I wanted to come before you today to just share a few things. We think that, of course, it would be a great idea and asset to the community, the Black community, to legalize medical marijuana. However, we do want to also mention and bring to everyone's attention that there are a number of Black and brown bodies that are in prison because of the sale of marijuana. And in the event that we legalize marijuana in any form, we request that their record to be expunged for the portion of, for any crimes for the sale or possession of medical marijuana, sorry. We also ask that some of the money that we gain in these tax dollars be used for uplifting the impoverished community. We have a homelessness problem in the state with very, very few shelters. Many of those people that are homeless suffer from mental illness. So we ask for money to be dedicated towards those lives. Also within those impoverished communities, the schools, more money into those schools so that there's smaller class sizes. I also noticed that there's a lot of research that has been done, which I think is wonderful, but I did not hear anyone last meeting or this meeting mention anything about research being done on the diversity of investors and making that a requirement as well. The diversity of the investors and making that a requirement as well. I know that we said that maybe it shouldn't be a requirement that they be Georgia residents, which I can maybe understand. I'm not sure about that, but making it a requirement that the people that are coming in that are investing have a certain percentage in minorities. Because from what I'm hearing, it's a $5 million minimum investment. And marijuana, the sale of marijuana has definitely affected the Black community. So taking it from the Black market to the white market without allowing Black and brown bodies to have a legal way of buying in is a bit insulting, and I just don't think that would be right. So making that a requirement and some type of program that can help minorities to invest. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
All right, next up, Jack Prater.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Jack Prater. I'm 67. I'm a resident of Douglasville. I don't want your jobs, and I don't want what you're going through with your children. I can't imagine my way up. I have 5 kids and 3 grandkids, and the Lord knows I'm suffering for you right now. But I also suffer from me. I am a total train wreck physically. There's so many things wrong with me that I need help. And I'm not getting help from the medical profession. I hear two words all the time. I hear chronic and undiagnosed. Practicing medicine is what these folks do. And my mother was a registered nurse. She was the operating room supervisor. One of my best friends is my physician. I admire them both. But I have acute osteoarthritis. They give me Celebrex. It's an NSAID. It tears up my stomach. I can't take it every day. I've had 3 types of cancer. Right now I have chronic BCR-ABL myeloid leukemia. I take a chemo pill every day. The pill works. It kills what it's supposed to kill. It also messes me up really bad. I have really bad insomnia. My pulmonologist gives me a CPAP machine and sleeping pills. Don't go off the sleeping pills instantly. You got to go off Measles. Don't stay on too long. They're addictive. I have chronic peripheral neuropathy, undiagnosed. That's the medical opinion from Duke University, where I spent 5.5 hours in April in a lab, and they tell me that they don't know what caused it, and they certainly don't know how to treat it. So they give me gabapentin, a drug that was designed to treat seizures in children. What it does is it kills your nerve endings, so you can't feel the pain. It also kills my ability to know where my feet are. As I've told my representative there, I have fallen twice this year. I broke 3 ribs, and I busted the bursa of my patella and my kneecap because my brain and my feet don't communicate. I'm tired of being addicted to drugs. I need a quality of life. I'm thankful that my children don't have anything wrong with them, but Lord knows I've got enough wrong with me to the rest of us. And if this oil does what all the research that I've read, and my sister sends me this thing on the sacred plant once a week, and I listen to 2.5 hours and stuff, and I believe that I should be given the opportunity to make my life better. I deserve a quality of life. And I'm not achieving that through the miracles of medical science. That's because you got a shitty job. But we should be given the right to do things to improve the quality of our lives, the lives of our children, the lives of anybody out there that is not getting what they need through medicine. Thank you.
Next up, April Hain.
Good afternoon, everyone. I need a stepping stool.
Me too.
Thank you for having me. I had sent an email because I wasn't sure I was going to make this meeting. My suggestion for access was to do a SWOT analysis of all the states, which Ms. Driscoll already kind of did. Excuse me, I'm nervous. You guys making me nervous.
Sheriff, look away. Look away.
Well, if we do a SWOT analysis, we can determine the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats. And we do need to look at it from seed to sale in the total vertical integrated process. I personally don't believe that it should be vertically integrated just because of the cost. The 5 to 7 million she's saying is just to start. That does not include operational costs. And from my research, that's $30 million. So it's a lot of money. And then that increases the price for access. Let's see, I also have been consulting for a firm that buys and sells opportunities, and they see a lot of economic improvement in different areas, which does help fund Medicaid, the police department, and other budgets that have been cut. So those are my suggestions. You know, I can do other PowerPoints and things like that and send to someone else to speak, but I just wanted to give my opinion. Thank you.
And April, just so you know, we'll submit your email to research to be added to the report. All right, next up, Dan Berman. Dan still here? Okay, Coach Harris. Coach.
Good day, how y'all doing today? My name is Mikhail Harris. Everybody calls me Coach. A lot of legislators usually call me the road man because I'm really in depth with the industrial hemp industry that's in the state of Georgia. But I got into this industry in 2013. Me and a partner of mine, we LLC'd a company in Colorado called the Green Rush Team. Well, I'm sorry, CPR 420, which is Cypher Rules. When we first got into it, we took 20 individuals to the Colorado to get involved with the cannabis space business. As we were there, we found out that the 20 people we brought from Atlanta, Georgia, were all minorities, and that the industry looked like it had no area or no room for us. So me and my partner decided to come back to the state of Georgia and get involved with this whole process of getting minorities involved with it. Now, I know we're talking about safe access, and we're talking about access to the medication. And as Alan Peake said in the hearing in November 2015, he said that he actually gives this medication out. And at that hearing, I said if that happened in our community, that would be considered drug pushing, and that we would be put in jail for that same act that he was doing. So therefore, I was saying that, and the group are the people that I constantly push together as being part of the Green Rush team, is saying that we have to come together as a community and say we want a process and a safe access that you guys are having. And as we're coming to these meetings, we're hearing certain things like, Alan Peake, might have a dispensary or this or that, but there still is no conversation about minority participation and how to get involved, or how to, if an industry affected us as it is the war on drugs, how can our community be made whole and not left out of the industry? So therefore, as you guys do this consideration, as you guys start coming together, please put in mind how, because it's a group of individuals that are trying to come together to say, how can we be a part of this whole situation? If we were once targeted, how can we become part of the solution now? And that's the whole thing. We want inclusion and involvement with the process and safe access. Thank you very much.
Next up, Dana Ives.
Thanks very much for the opportunity, people. In 2006, our family came down to Georgia. My wife, Mary Ann, 2 children, Carolyn and Russ. In July of 2007, Mary Ann was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. She passed in 2014 after 4 chemos. I'm convinced that Mary Ann would still be alive had she been given the opportunity to be treated with CBD-THC combination. The research is out there. It's out there everywhere. That she's our motivation for starting a company for producing CBDs. We adhere to a very strict quality control process, and I submit that getting C of A's for our products can assist in the regulation, in satisfying regulatory issues that the state may have. We're located up in Tennessee. I agree wholeheartedly with Anthony and his assertions about the value of CBDs. The extensive security requirements drive up the costs, hence we've chosen to be processors as opposed to growers in Tennessee. I would urge the committee to check with the folks up there in Tennessee who are running it. We're under the auspices, or the authority, I should say, of the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. We were vetted before we were granted a license. I cannot be a felon to own the company. So there are a lot of controls that are in place by the state of Tennessee to ensure that they have reputable people in the business. June 18th, or rather June of 18, the FDA approved GK Pharma for a derivative from the marijuana plant for treatment of a very specific epilepsy, and that was approved in June of this year. So the train is running. We need to get on board. This can be a boom to the agriculture people in Georgia, as well as in Tennessee and in Kentucky and various other states where it's legal to grow industrial hemp and the medical marijuana. Many studies show that there are very positive effects from the CBD applications. I'm not aware of any study out there that says that it hinders any treatment using conventional methods. And yet, the average prescription has some 70 side effects. CBDs are a natural, they have a natural affinity for the human body. The one example of excessive dosing of CBDs led to nausea. And that's it. So I would also submit here that the 2018 Farm Bill, sponsored by Mitch McConnell, thank you, is running through committee right now, and it's being looked at by both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Hopefully that will be signed into law that deschedules industrial hemp from 1 to below. And the last point I would make is that opioids have been identified as a huge problem. Opioids are prescribed. Opioids are also known to be addictive. Cannabis is not.
Next up, I think it says Brian Ingram. Brian Ingram. Go Falcons.
Yes, so in 2004, my brother passed away of colon cancer, and he was 35 years old, and one of the first things that the doctors told my mother and father were that he should find RSO as soon as possible. And this is like, I'm gonna say 2 or 3 months before his passing. And my mom was, the first thing my mom kept saying was, it's not legal. That means we have to go out of town, we have to fly back in, it's not legal. And my dad, same thing, it's not legal, so we understood. My brother passed away. And and in my mind, I said, damn, what's legal? I mean, this is my brother. And it influenced me to make some decisions on my own. So I dedicated myself and my life to make sure that nobody else in my family and nobody else around me passes away from cancer again if I can make some kind of form of help myself. So in 2004, I started learning about cannabis products, how the plant works, how it's grown, how it's processed, everything I could. So just speed up. I started growing for myself, and I had an accident in 2006. I was asked to, I was prescribed some type of severe medication. I refuse. I'm a vegan. I don't really eat meat or anything. I try to eat healthy foods. Try to take care of myself, have some type of responsibility in what I put in my body. And cannabis is really just comes under the family of Rosales. That's the same thing as blueberries, mulberries, hawthorns, nettles, hops. That's what's in your beer. It's just fruit. And for the criminalization of a fruit, it's showing that the people who are criminalizing this fruit is more of a crime than the people who are trying to take in the fruit. I come to this point right now that on September 7, 2018, Athena Wagner, who depended on me for her oil, passed away, and I feel totally responsible because in June I decided to close my shop and stop growing I wanted to move to California and put myself in a legal situation where I could be in a legal industry and not be breaking the law anymore. So I closed my shop. I told the guy who owned my house, the house I lived in, that I was moving. He comes to my house. I'm arrested for growing because he sees grow equipment. And from there, that was June. From there, I decided I was not going to grow in Georgia. 3 months later, Athena Wagner passes away from not having the oil I was helping her have. I also have no more oil available for myself that I was taking for my own back pain. There has to be a time where we take responsibility in our differences as people, that we can find a solution to what's going on with cannabis. I see a lot of people here anti-marijuana, we can't find growers, anti-this, anti-that. But there's a solution. The solution is people would rather be well and healed of their diseases than going to jail. And for me and myself, I would rather go to jail and have my brother here, or go through what I've been through, than police officers here and their will to do their jobs. And I'm not anti-police, I'm not anti anything else, but there has to be a time where we can sit down and take smart responsibility in what we're deciding to do.
Thank you. Next up, Alexis H. Alexis.
Hello, and thank you for having us today. I appreciate the committee and your efforts. A lot of people have spoke about points that I wanted to speak about, but I'm going to move on to just asking that the committee please create an option for patients who cannot afford low cost. There are people who have extreme poverty issues, so we need to make sure that as we're writing regulations and rules to include all citizens, and to have people come in and make over $21,000 within a 6-month time frame on CBD products, that these people who are making all of this money also make sure that people like we're here for have access to care. So although we're talking about low-cost options, there's some people who can't afford anything. They're barely able to afford their rent, their water, et cetera, et cetera. So as we're writing rules, please make sure we're addressing patients who may be experiencing extreme poverty. Additionally, I helped initiate the Second Safe Syringe program in the state of Georgia. So when I became a part of that movement, I realized that a lot of people were affected by opioids. So as we sit here and talk about why we cannot legalize cannabis, I'm confused because we just said that jails, liquor stores, and other legalized things are highly regulated but cannot be stopped. So if we're going to make that point, then we need to make it a point to come with a solution for every issue we come up with. And it comes through open communication, not just with committees and formal settings like this. We need to make sure we're going to the communities that are affected by these issues, and not just soccer moms and et cetera, because there's elders who are sick who can't leave their house. There are adults who have seizures as well, beyond just children. So let's keep all of these things in mind as we make regulations.
Next up, Reggie Beeman.
Good afternoon. My name is Reginald Beeman. I know I wrote Reggie, but for the sake of business, Reginald Beeman. I stand before you today supporting CBD and hemp. I think that Georgia has to look around them. Tennessee's growing hemp. South Carolina's growing hemp. Alabama's getting ready to grow hemp. I'm not so much on cultivating marijuana, but I am into cultivating the hemp that creates the medicine that allows us to get well in Georgia. So while we're looking at where we're going to go, let's keep our people well. Hemp and CBD keeps our people well. While y'all think about what you're going to do at the next level, in the meantime, the rest of us can be healthy. And we can get the medicine that we need in here if they can grow the hemp for the CBD. And I say that because I am a patient. In 2010, when I moved here from California, and I moved here because California was headed recreational, but California was recreational under the medical marijuana program. Let's keep it 100. California's been recreational. They just saying it now. Okay? I don't care about us going as much recreational because we're already recreational too. But what I want us to do is be healthy and legal. I don't care about the people that want to get high because they're going to get high off of whatever they choose to get high on. But his son and maybe her daughter don't have a choice. They need to get well. Let me tell you what I've done. I have a 10-month-old daughter. Teething is horrible for kids. The first thing you're going to tell me to do is go buy Orajel. And the second thing I'm going to ask you is what's in it. But I can take some CBD and I can rub it on my baby gums. And that pain go away just like that. Okay? I've seen it. She almost 9.5 months with no teeth. I started putting that CBD on it. 2 days, y'all. She had 2 teeth. But no pain, no agony. Is what I'm saying is, it's good, it's well, it's God's plan. We call ourselves the Bible Belt. We're not talking about a plant made in a factory, sir. We're not talking about that kind of cultivation. We're talking about take one of God's seeds, like this, throw it on the ground, put some water on it, and let it come up and produce the medicine. That's all we ain't asking for no miracles. We ain't asking for nobody to come and create nothing that's going to blow our brains away. We asking for something that's going to make us feel good. And if you ain't never been, sir, you almost had me cry. Yes, sir. And it's hard to make me cry. But he almost had me cry because if you ain't never had neuropathy, where you couldn't feel the bottom of your feet, sorry, I saw you 30 seconds. If you ain't never had that, then you don't know. What you're looking at today, I don't know how much I weigh. I probably weigh about 200 pounds, right? But when I started on this CBD, y'all, I was 285 pounds. I had 12 different pills I was taking. Glyburide, metformin, glucophage, Naprin. I was on high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes. I was on every pill. I went to my doctor and I said, man, what do I got to do to get off this? He said, meet me outside. I'm going to give you this and you walk. He gave me some CBD and he told me to walk. I turned into Forrest Gump. I started walking 3 miles every day and took my CBD in the morning and took my CBD at night. CBD help you lose weight if you're overweight. And it'll help you lose weight when you won't even know you're doing it. It's good, y'all. It ain't all bad, Doc. And I'm glad you got your job. Those are shitty jobs. I know some great sheriffs and police officers, but those aren't shitty jobs. I wouldn't live in a place they didn't have them. All we ask you to do is right. And last day, the Valley Day, Pete Scandalakis, his little brother was my running back in high school. So we all on the same page in here. 42 years later, I haven't seen that man in 42 years. We on the same page. We on the CPD. Let's get this right, y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Beeman. I wouldn't want to follow that. Somebody's got to. So, Kevin Rogers, I got the name scratched through, so he may be gone. Is Kevin gone? Dylan Manis, scratched through, no. Ashley Slayton.
Working hard, you guys always work hard. My
My name's Ashley Slayton. I'm a 30-year-old veteran, minority at that. Retired out the military when I was 22 years old due to PTSD and borderline issues, and as well as physical issues. And because of my age, and I believe because I'm a woman and a minority, I was forced to go back to what I learned from, which is poverty, to get my medication so that I could be able to sustain my now 10-year relationship. Reaching out to the VA has been very hard, and especially now they know I'm pro-cannabis. It's a lot of self-treatment. At 30 years old, no woman, no anyone in here should be able to go through the hardships of have to get arrested. Because simply Seroquel, I'm prescribed Seroquel, right? And being prescribed that, when I do get in my modes and I feel depressed, suicidal, which I have marks up on my neck from that, I take Seroquel. It then takes the feeling that I have and exaggerates it to where that I fought. I'm not proud to say this, my parents, my spouse, people who dearly love me and now don't want anything to do with me. I have started my own company, and it's a small business so that I can help other veterans such as Anthony Hill. I definitely feel his situation because that could have been me 2 weeks ago. So I really need you guys and also law enforcement that I witnessed my cousin become a felon because of poverty, and have to go through marijuana to know, hey, I need no job is going to hire me. I'm 16, 15 years old. My mom better gets all this money because she's mentally challenged. So now I have to go sell weed. I have to go sell cannabis. I have to go sell crack cocaine. I have to go sell all these methamphetamines that's going to get me hurt. But guess what? I'm 16 with a baby. I'm 16 with a cousin that I need to inspire so that she can get into the military. This affects a lot of people. And I am down for everyone needs to get together because you have veterans, you have so many people that needs this, guys. It should not be an argument, but it is. I don't know what else to say, but please, we're right. We need to start somewhere, but do not shut each and every individual out because we all have our own hardships that this low THC and possibly greater, and cultivation. That's one of them. Like I said, I'm from the western side of Atlanta, Simpson Road, Bankhead Courts. Many of us are familiar with this. If we can have some type of program so we can cultivate, we can take these inner city kids or problem urban kids or farmer kids and go out there and blend them all together and teach them how to cultivate and create medicine so we can do something better for our future. Teach them how to make us better when we're no longer able to walk around. And they're going to wipe our butts happily. Why? Because we use cannabis as a way to integrate people and not separate. So thank you. My name is Ashley Slayton, and y'all have a good day. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Slayton. This one scratched through too, but I'm going to call it, I think it says Robin Carter. Corey Henry.
Morning or afternoon yet. How you doing? I know a couple of you guys. Good to see you. My name's Corey Henry. I'm a West Point graduate. I'm an Iraq war veteran, Bronze Star medalist. I moved here to Georgia after I got back from Iraq. After serving Iraq and never taking a drink for almost a year, I think I began to self-medicate, not knowing that I suffered from PTSD. I learned later through listening to other people's accounts of what PTSD was and the depression that follows. I also learned that people that have chronic pain also have depression that follows. What most of us don't know is that sympathetically, when you go to the VA, you pretty much get given as much medicine as you want because you served. And I think it's done out of a good heart, not knowing the long-term ramifications that causes. And when a pill that used to take 12 hours begins to last 8 hours, begin to last 4 hours, and then 2 hours, and you notice that you're living your life from pill to pill, as a person that served, as a person that believes in moral code, duty, honor, country, you think to yourself, I'm not supposed to have this problem. I'm not supposed to be in the streets looking for drugs. And I can understand why 22 people a day that are veterans, a minimum, are killing themselves. But that's from a personal point of view. From a systematic point of view, we have 22 people a day that feel like there's no hope. 22 people feel that nobody cares about what they're going through. And climbing. 66,000 Americans a year are dying from opioid overdose. I'm a close friend of Dr. Rashawn Hodge. I've seen him work in these streets. He's signed up over 700 different patients for medicinal cannabis cards, and not one false side effect. So I'm here to speak because I feel like we should do what makes sense. I think that Georgia owes a debt of gratitude to its veterans. I think they owe a debt of gratitude and to the future of this state. And for every parent that has to worry about a child possibly having a seizure, that affects the entire household, not just the child that might have a seizure. If you don't know if the boogeyman's going to come, you are constantly under stress, constantly. And that can cause depression. So we're talking about treating Georgia's families, not just sick people. We're talking about healing homes, not just individuals. And I think that we have to consider that, and consider that carefully as we think about the position that we play in history. And history will have its say in the decisions that we make on this. So thank you for this time. I don't envy the position that you're in. You have a lot of pull back and forth, but at the end of the day, there's over 900,000 veterans in Georgia and climbing. There are refugees coming from every state that are getting hit with these storms, and Georgia is growing. And I think that Georgia has to really consider how to take care of its citizens. Thank you.
I wasn't going to follow that either. Dr. Hodge, you got it?
Oh, I'm deferring to.
Okay.
I'm deferring to you.
Okay. Come on.
Man, how y'all doing?
Good.
First of all, I want to let you know, my name's Gil. I'm from a group called Goody Mob, a group called Outcasts, Dungeon Family. Our music probably brought Atlanta into this mecca time right now. We sold over 100 million records. Every time we get on stage, people come from other countries to come see us. But I'm gonna let you know something. My father went to war for this country twice. He went to Vietnam and he went to Kuwait, right? My father's on 16 medications, right? He been in the hospital for the last 2 weeks. He was up moving around, cutting grass, and kicking it just 2 weeks ago. The doctor said, we're gonna put you on some new medicine. He was down in 48 hours. I had to take him to the hospital. They feed him full of, he can't eat, can't go to the bathroom. This is all because of opioids. And I'm gonna tell you about me. I've been smoking weed since I've been 15, 14 years old. Real. I tell you the truth. Because I always did music, I didn't follow rules. I always knew what I was here to do, right? So when I got hurt in the warehouse, when I was 17 years old, I hurt my leg. I put my leg between the forklift and the wall. When the man gave me a 17-year-old kid Vicodin, right? I took it one time. It made me feel like a heroin addict. I knew what that was because I've been in the traps. I've been around the street. So I knew what the gnaw was and itching. I was like, I don't like that. What is that? My grandmama was full-blooded Cherokee. So most of the way I grew up was stuff that she put together. So I watched this man, I called this man, I said, man, my dad, man, he ain't moving. Bring him some medicine, home. Man brought the man some medicine, man. He ain't moved in 2 days. He gave him 2-3 pills and gave him some gummies. He sat up in the bed and started eating. Come on. I don't really live by the average people, laws and regulations, man. I'm in and make hit records out of nothing. I make 100,000 people jump up, go overseas, they know my name. But I know one thing, marijuana work, man. Marijuana work, huh? You would let doctors get filthy rich off, I'm killing people. You let doctors get rich. Me as an artist, how I feel when I don't even really like speaking, I do this in the music. 25 years I've been doing this. 25 years I've been down for Atlanta, Georgia, bringing people to Georgia. And for my father to have to go to war for this country for 2 years, my family being one of the biggest black landowners in this country, in Georgia. I always had paper. And I always watch rich people do what the fuck they want to do because they got money. I only talk like this because y'all know I'm real. Rich people do what they want to do. Believe that. So all I'm saying is we're going to be real about it. Man, come on now. How many people got to keep dying? How many people got to keep telling you your work? And we not changing. Yeah, I got a company in California. Yeah. Damn right. Yeah, I'm going to get in it too. I'm going to get some of that thing too. But I'm going to heal some people too. That's right. And I know it works. Because when I'm tired and I got to get up there and do an hour and 45 minutes, I can smoke me a joint and get up there and do an hour and 45 minutes. And it not hurt because I'm 45 years old now. So I don't move the way I used to. But I'm telling y'all, it works. Scrap all the bullshit, man. Everybody around that's gonna make money, man. They gonna heal their people. And we gonna be around here playing. We the Bible Belt. We the last to get there. I don't drink. I bet you a lot of officers drink. I know a lot of them. They drink alcohol. I don't drink. I don't want to be woozy. But I know marijuana works, dog. It works. And it's time to change the laws and stop playing. Man, come on, man. Crime is going to be here.
Either way.
Fix who want to be right, though. Because people still going to sell drugs, and as we know it's bad people on both sides. Officers selling drugs and the streets selling drugs. So don't put it on that. Let's put it on right now. We in 2018. We smart. We all know what's going on. Let's do the correct thing. Damn the old South. We let Hollywood in here, and then we can buy liquor on Sunday. I don't want to do patient testimonies, but his father, in the fight of his life, he has stage 4 prostate cancer. He went to an oncologist with the inkling of hope if you do this radiation that it's going to shrink his tumor. It didn't. Then he went to the oncologist, sadly, and said, hey, what's next? Try this chemotherapy. It didn't. And so now it's in his pelvis, it's stage 4. And so what Emory did was, and not bashing my constituents, but they offered this experimental chemotherapy drugs. Experimental, because, again, we all know the answer, CBD can help and THC, but they still didn't mention that and offered some experimental that didn't pass any phase 3 clinical trials. So his father was cutting grass just 2 days before he started the medication. As soon as he took 2 doses of the medication, he had intractable diarrhea, and it left him bedridden and weak. He had to get admitted to the hospital, and he reached out. I had signed him up for the cannabis program the week before, and he was discharged. His diarrhea stopped with just the CBD and the low cannabis. I mean,
he got out the hospital, diarrhea stopped in 1 day using this cannabis oil. So it does work. I've seen it all, 750 plus patients of mine, it works. Thanks for the testimony. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr.
All right, before I get the next one, just so we kind of keep in check a little bit, let's just go easy on the language. I know we're all passionate here, but just, going back to rule number 1, let's just be respectful. So, okay, next up, Nicole.
Hello, committee again. Thank you for having this meeting and allowing us to speak. My name is Nicole Bufong. I am the Georgia chapter president for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. I am also a patient here in Georgia. My main concerns, committee, I have to get my own medicine because 5% THC does not work to help the neuropathy that I deal with on a daily basis. I'm an HIV positive patient. I've been diagnosed a year now. That will soon be healed with my diet and not using pharmaceuticals to actually heal my body. And so I asked this committee to consider how important it is for my access because I commit a crime daily. Like these other citizens can understand, like the 5,000 other patients here in Georgia do daily. To have access to the medicine that I need to keep me off of deadly, lethal, toxic opioids. And so I'm asking that we consider what the safe access is going to be in the next year or 2 years. If you all decide and form this law, how long is it going to take? I have to consider leaving the state, being a medical refugee, because if I don't, I risk my freedom. And so what are we going to do today, tomorrow, next year, 6 months from now, to actually say, here's the medicine that you need, you don't have to commit a crime to get it anymore. And just briefly, in states where cannabis and medical cannabis is legal, 25% of opioid deaths have been reduced. And so that's important to note for law enforcement and for doctors that are forming these laws to help us to understand how important it is that we have access to the medicine that we need. I have to use RSO, what Brian mentioned earlier. That is the only thing. 5% THC oil does not work to help manage my pain successfully. So I have to use part of the plant, just a different formulation, but still part of the same plant in order to help me successfully to attack the pain that I manage daily. So as a patient and as an advocate, I'm asking the committee to please consider within the next 6 months, within the next 2 months, we elect a new governor, and what is the next step? I'm looking at Canada to move to, or Florida to move to, so that I can have safe access to the medicine that I need every day. And so I thank the committee for allowing us to say our piece, but also make sure that you all take into consideration the longer that this process drags out, the more people die, the more people that suffer, and the more people that risk, opioid addiction, which then turns into heroin addiction and methamphetamine addiction. And so I'm just asking the committee to take all those things into consideration as you move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole. Next up, Sandy Barnett. Sandy. I know you. Good.
My brothers and I own the Tennessee Hemp Exchange, which is a hemp dispensary in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We sell all forms of hemp, smokable and non-smokable forms, gummies. And I would just like to say that you guys are far aware of how beneficial this product is. I would just like to say that my brother is a long-time opioid addict. And since we've opened the store, he's reduced his intake of opioids almost to zero. It's very beneficial to him and beneficial to us because we don't have to take care of it. Yeah, it's a huge problem. My mother has multiple sclerosis. However, because of the stigma of the product, she will not take it. So she does nothing for her multiple sclerosis or her chronic pain because she does not want to take opioids. My father was a veteran in Vietnam. He suffered from PTSD. Little did I know until recently that he smoked marijuana most of his life. And what we found out was he got a new job a couple of years before he had a stroke, a massive stroke, that really debilitated him and made his quality of life pretty much nil. He had stopped smoking marijuana to get this job. And within 3 months, he had a massive stroke. I would also like to say that we've had no crime issues at our store in Chattanooga, with no on-site security, no attempted robberies or break-ins. It's a good product. It's a good alternative for the people of this state. You should give us access to it. Thank you.
Next up, Daniel Thomas. Is Daniel still here? Or does that might be Donnell. Is there Donnell Thomas? Okay. Kathy Joyce.
I'm here, but I didn't request to speak.
Okay. Somebody really wanted to hear you speak, Kathy. Well, we'll skip it. Chris Brown. Is it really you this time?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good.
When I came here today, I was full of energy. You know, they just gave me a fresh, good meal, and I came prepared to kind of listen to the testimony and take the information back to my community, who has become eager to learn more about cannabis and what's going on in Georgia. But after hearing a lot of the testimony and hearing people give their presentations, I think I get a lot of anxiety, and I don't really like public speaking, but I have a mother that's being treated, right? And so most of my life, I watched my mother go through pain and just take all these different medications till Mother's Day. I just couldn't watch it no more. So I took her to get treated with cannabis and some good recommendations, right? So what I quickly learned is that who's going to get the cannabis for you? Because it's not technically legal. And so I hear the police officers talk about the crimes. So you're going to force me to be a criminal. So you created laws to give treatment, but not to give access. I appreciate what you guys do because you're elected by the people and for the people. The study committee that came before this, obviously, I don't know, but you have the opportunity to make good on what's going on right now. There are several states around the country that has gotten this somewhat right. We can learn from them. And the only thing that we're asking you to do is to grant access to make the first step to go in the right direction. I don't think it's a hard situation. There was a lot of people that came this morning because of communication. There was a communication mix-up because how the communication from the Senate side and the House side communicated about these meetings, because they said originally there was 9 o'clock this morning. So there are a lot of people that may have came, they may have also left. So I just want to let you know that also the state has an obligation that since you passed this law, is to educate more people about what's going on. And you will also see a bigger market of people because people are asking and wanting to know. We keep hearing on the news, we keep hearing about marijuana access, we keep hearing what's going on in Georgia. When we talk about being inclusive about all these different communities, we have an obligation. And I think that a lot of these third-party advocacy groups have taken on the responsibility of what the state has already put out, that we should be doing ourselves. That should be coming from the state. We should be having to get it from third-party advocacy groups, thinking that we're getting the right information. So we got 3 different state communications that gave different times and locations. So we can start by one, just investing the energy and the financing into educating the population to what's going on. You may have even more input and be able to make better decisions about what's going on. This is a great group of people here that's coming and dedicating their time to making way with this recommendation. And I hope by December, I know we said start small, think big, but also be inclusive. And also think about those other people that's not represented, that's in here in this room. I don't want to be a criminal, you know what I mean, too much longer, because guess what? That's my mom. Either I have my brother that go kill me. So don't put me in that situation in my community that I represent, you know. They're dependent on us, and we depend on you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marcus Mack, maybe? Is there a Marcus in there? Okay. Robert John. Robert still with us?
Dawn Erickson.
My name is Dawn Erickson, and I work with autistic families. And one of the biggest things that we're finding out is that the kids that have autism, there's a spectrum of things that they have, as you well know. And it isn't just a child. That child grows up to be an adult. They don't outgrow it. They just become more frustrated, and they need access to the CBD oil because I have seen it work. I also have fibromyalgia. I also have peripheral neuropathy, and every day I've been given a handful of pills, of which I don't want to take because I do know what, I don't want to become addicted, but I don't want to be in pain either. So I want to see the CBD oil available to anybody that has pain, autism, PTSD, whatever the problem. If we can make it available for our citizens to feel better, I'm in favor of it. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, that concludes the public comment. Before we adjourn, as we go forward with the future meetings, I'm a passionate guy. I think there's some folks in the room that know my passion on this particular issue, passion for my family, and I know that there's some very passionate testimony. And when we are giving that testimony, we've got to make sure that we stay in line with protocol that's respectful, language that's appropriate, because this will be recorded and it'll also be viewed on the state website. There'll be others watching it. And if it's something that can't be shown in a classroom, that is not appropriate, we've got to make sure about that. But I want to tell you, to law enforcement, listen, they walked into a hornet's nest. And listen, on that passionate issue, I want to say thank you for being here today. It's probably tough standing before the crowd. I don't envy what you do, but I 100% support what you do. And I'll tell you why. And I'm passionate on this issue because I have constituents like Jack Prater, J.Bo Wages, Dawn Erickson. I've worked with Dale and with Shannon and with Alan Peak on this issue. I've seen it. That was what got me started on this issue. Seeing their families, meeting their families in Paulding County, in Douglas County, and then it affected my own family. From a family member that's 6 years old to a family member that's 67 years old. And I've seen the results, the positive results, but let me tell you why I want to thank law enforcement, because a very, very close family member, 67 years old, and has the onset of dementia, and whose life in our family has changed drastically. It was a Paulding County Sheriff's deputy that brought her back when she had got out at 10:30 at night to a grandfather in my family who took care of her, who made sure she was safe, and brought her back to our family. Now listen, as passionate as I am and as supportive as I am of making sure this oil is accessible in this state, I think the only way we're going to get there is sitting down and having these tough conversations. Sitting down and utilizing and leaning on testimony, the data, the facts, without shunning or making someone feel that they're not welcome. I want everybody to feel welcome. I want that testimony from every individual, because I believe every testimony that was given today was vitally important. Sheriff Long, Sheriff Pope, Director Orrick, I want to thank y'all for being here. I want to thank you for the testimony. I want to thank everybody who testified, because it shows courage to be vulnerable and talk about, whether it be a personal situation, whether it be a horrific or very heartbreaking family situation. I don't know what everybody goes back home to. And I know when I go back home to, And I know the situations that we're dealing with in our family. So as we go forward, let's be mindful of that. A lot of times the opposing view challenges us to dig deeper into why we believe what we believe. But also I want to be respectful of that opposing view. As we go forward, our next meeting is
October 5th in Athens, and every meeting is at 1 o'clock.
every meeting.
And that was in the original release that we put out. So every meeting will be from 1 to 3:30 and moving forward. And I don't know what happened on the website there with the house, but it was on the house side, so they miss things like all the time.
But before we adjourn, everybody be safe going back to their homes. And here's the deal. The press releases that we send out are being written by the House, by the Senate, and then also by a third party. So senators and I are the same. But we want to hear from you. We want to make sure that what happens in Georgia doesn't, listen, I want to make one thing clear. When Colorado came and testified in the beginning of the first study committee, and this was Colorado's testimony, they told us, the architects of the Colorado model said, stay with medical and don't go recreational. We would have preferred to stay medical in Colorado. Now that's what Colorado told us. That was their testimony. In Georgia, we want to find best practices for medical going forward for an oil so that the people who need the help can get the help. And we want to make sure that we do that in a very regulated fashion to where we have law enforcement at the table, we have the DAs at the table, we have those in state government that want to be at the table so that we can make a system that works for the people of Georgia. So I bid you a great day. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time away from your jobs and your businesses to be here. And Godspeed to you. We're adjourned.